YouTube there. In fact, it's so dark here, I'm going to see if I can do something about that, because we got a couple of lamps burned out back there. You know what? I'm going to be I'll be the floating head in the darkness for this one, I think. I hope everyone is doing well. We are recording this on the 28th of December 2023, which means it will be the last Stratosphere Lounge show of 2023, and I say good riddance. Not to Stratosphere Lounge necessarily, but to 2023, which has been just a brutal year for yours truly. Don't know how it's been for you. Hope it's been better. So, yeah, it's awful dark, man. The hell is going on? Well, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them out, fortunately, however. I was able to order through sources that I'm not at liberty to disclose at the moment some contraband here. Nobody's watching the show anyway, really, not in terms of large enough numbers that the feds are likely to intervene. But I do have here some items, and well, needless to say, if the forces that be here in California found out I was actually holding on to, let alone hoarding one of these, I'd be in real trouble. Fortunately, I'm prepared for this eventuality. If there is a raid, I've been practicing this move very carefully. I won't show one of these. I'll just show one of those. See the difference? Everybody get that? Nothing to it. This is saving the planet. This is causing mass extinction, and as always here in California, I intend to remain in full compliance. You cannot get these for love or money. Well, I didn't try the love part. In California, these have to be specially ordered, and they may look pretty much identical to you, but obviously they're not. This you can get in California. This is a LED version of this halogen lamp. I didn't say halogen lamp. I said something that sounded like Palogen camp. This puts out a light that is so white it's suitable for morgues, janitorial. No, I wouldn't do that to janitors. You get the idea. This is it's just a nasty white light. This, on the other hand, being an incandescent bulb, and a planet-wrecking one at that, produces a really nice warm light. So in any event, over the course of, since we've been here since 2011, 12, the halogens have been on, and one by one they've gone out, but I got these ordered not too long ago, so I'll replace those before, we'll have them back for the new year, for the new show and all the rest of it. Kind of silly, isn't it, really? You would think that in a sane society, and even California used to be relatively sane like this, in a sane society, you would be able to say, here are two options. One of them uses considerably more electricity than the other one does. And you can buy either one of them depending on whether you want to save money or not. But this option is not an option. However, like I said, I know people. Got a contact in, I suppose it wouldn't be giving too much away, to say that he's somewhere in the Morocco area, has a nightclub with a large number of track lights. And I don't want to brag or anything. Let's just say that he's keeping me well supplied. I don't have too much to worry about as far as that goes. So anyway, yeah, that's that. And then of course we have these other guys here, which I don't think you've ever seen. Had them here since we started doing the show in this location. We did quite a few Stratosphere Lounge shows back in the early days, back at Declaration Entertainment with me and my edit bay and Jeremy Boring in his office across the hall. But this is what does the magic here. It's all. Hang on a second. I'm running into a small problem with cordage, and I had this one too. Well, forget it. You'll see them next. No, you know what? Here's the easy solution. There you see. There they are. These guys are no problem because they are in fact LED lights, but they're very soft LED lights. They're Philips hues, and you can adjust the get the color and the brightness and the color plus also the brightness and all the rest of it. And it's just it's been doing a good job for me for a while. However, on the Opal 4K camera, we got to go with lots and lots of soft light boxes and diffuse filters, and then I gotta actually helps to smear just a tiny little thin film of Vaseline over the lens just to kind of take out all the flaws. Somebody said I need a shave. I need a shave and a haircut. But fortunately, all I got is a quarter. But that'll do it. And for anybody who doesn't get that reference, then see this week's members-only Stratosphere, members-only backstage show, where we discuss one of the enduring mysteries of the human experience, and that is, how is it possible that shave and a haircut, 2 bits, became hardwired into the human brain? For those of you who didn't get to see the show, but not being members, just this once, I'll give you a small taste of just the kind of content that you're missing. I was Natasha and I had ordered delivery dinner a couple nights earlier, and a guy came up to the door and he went, and so naturally I went, how is it that everybody knows that? Well, it turns out that is a routine. I think it's from the golden days of vaudeville, and it's called shave and a haircut, 2 bits. And the only reason I know that is because I heard it in Roger Rabbit. Shave and a haircut. And Roger Rabbit can't stand it anymore. 2 bits. It's in everything if you think about it. Did somebody mention yes. Dave Big Booty beat me to it. Probably because it was at the end of the Johnny Carson theme song, right? Da-dun-dun-dun-dum, bum-ba-da-da-da-dum, bum-bum. It's everywhere. Nobody knows how it got there. It's like the Wilhelm scream, which we talked about before. Those of you not familiar with that either might want to look it up. It's fun. The Wilhelm is a sound effect that was recorded during the golden age of the black and white B-movie westerns. Some guy gets shot by an arrow. Some extra, I don't even know if he had a line. And instead of going, he went, ah! I can't reproduce it because it's not reproducible, but you'll know the sound. So anyway, the guy's name apparently was Wilhelm. And that Wilhelm scream was so iconic, it's been put in everything. The Wilhelm scream has been in something like 50, 60 movies. It's really kind of interesting. Oh, there it is, Dave Big Booty. Now this time he's after me. It's in Star Wars. It's in everything. It's the Wilhelm scream. Here, now that I've done nothing but talk about it, I'll play it for you. Hang on a second. That way I'll save you guys a trip to YouTube. I'll just play it. Feedback be damned, I say. But the history of it is kind of interesting. It became kind of a running joke. I type in W-I-L-H-E and it's immediately Wilhelm scream. The problem is now that it was an in-joke before, but now it's been so overused that everybody's onto it. It actually kind of annoys me a little bit. Hang on a second. There it is, 22 seconds long. I'm going to be quiet. Here it comes. Ready? There it is, 22 seconds long. I'm going to be quiet. Here it comes. Ready? Nope.
The first one you did up here was much better. Oh! Not an owl. A real scream. Thing. Oh!
Now, apparently, it sounds like it's from a recording studio. Now, I don't know whether somebody's making a joke about that. I thought it was recorded live. But perhaps the Wilhelm scream was, in fact, a post-production event. In any event, you know it. So there it is. It's just a fun little Easter egg. Used to be, like I said, it's a little overdone now. Yeah, Eric says I always smile when I hear the Wilhelm scream. I do too, actually. It's like the ultimate in joke. It's not even an in joke anymore. It used to be something that sound engineers would do to amuse other sound engineers. It really was. It was, when I say it was an in joke, it was like shop joke, and they would drop these things in there every now and then just to get a laugh out of the other sound designers, and no one else ever got it. Then somehow it got a little famous. Then everybody started doing it, and now it's almost like a I don't know, like a VIP badge or something, in an audience. It's like those 10% of you out there that know the Wilhelm is probably approaching 40% now. But it's fun. I'm sure I'll use it somewhere. And then again, part of me says, no, don't do it, Bill. Don't succumb. Anyway, so this is the last show of 2023. A rough year for me. I forget who said it a moment ago. This is getting tired of these 2020 reruns. The 2020s have not been overly impressive so far to yours truly. But nevertheless, we are out of here. And the whole idea, is, it's really an interesting psychological idea, this whole New Year's thing. It's a damn good idea, is what it is. It really is it's a psychological slate cleaning. Not going to be anything different about January 1st than there was about December 31st, and time doesn't come in these discrete little quanta. Well, actually it does, but they're considerably shorter than a year. Nevertheless, it is an enormously powerful psychological device to be able to say, okay, well, this one's over. Now we get to start again. And I don't know if I've ever heard that work backwards. In other words, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say 2023 was just the greatest year ever, and I'm sure 2024 will be worse. It's always optimistic, this kind of slate cleaning thing. Yeah. It's going to be, it's just funny how it works. And a lot of it has to do with that New Year's Christmas bracket, that week, which we are in the middle of right now, even as we speak. Even as we speak. We're in that, I certainly don't want to call it a dead week, but let's just call it, like a dead week, where you got Christmas, which is a huge holiday, New Year's is a huge holiday, and that whole week nothing happens. And it's almost like the end zone. That's what it is, like the end zone at the end of a year. It's like nothing happens during that final 10, 20 yards. So we'll just say Christmas Eve is really the end of the year. That's the goal line. And then you get the end zone, which is December 25th through 31st. So we'll see. My lovely wife, Natasha, who just this once happens to be in the next room, came in 2 nights ago and said she has a friend who got us tickets to the Rose Bowl parade, which is on New Year's morning. And I've been here since 1988, and I have never been to the Rose Bowl parade. And furthermore, during the first 4 years, I was a limousine driver in Pasadena, and all I know is that all I remember of that is that this was the worst 24 hours of the year for limo drivers, because you had New Year's Eve people staying out till 4 in the morning, and then right around 5, 6 in the morning, you had to get ready to go start get the people who are getting early to the Rose Bowl parade. So in any event, there you go. Canada has a float in the parade this year. Well, I'll thank you for that knowledge. I will stand up and sing "Oh Canada." I don't know the words, but there you go. Based on the audience feedback, let me just knock on the dressing room. I would not say that this is likely, but I'll go and check with with Miss Betty Davis and see if she's willing to, just stick her head out the window and wave at the hoi polloi. Hang on a second. Honey, I made a mistake of saying that you were in the building. I made a mistake of announcing on the show that you were in the room. We'll talk about it a little bit. She's agreed to do it. She's agreed to do it. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Here, she's walking through the darkness right now. Here she is. See. Hi. For those of you who have not been watching recently, this is my beautiful wife, Natasha. Our wedding anniversary is December 31st, which is New Year's Eve coming right up. Yes. We got married like right there. And the official, the ceremony was officiated by Jeremy Boring. So that's another fun fact to know and tell. I'm just trying to get through minimum viable product here, honey. Trying to get like 1 hour's worth of stuff done and close this year out. Thanks for coming out and saying hi to everybody. They always ask about you.
And Happy New Year, guys.
Oh, thank
That's,
you. Isab says, hey, she looks American, because she is.
Oh,
she is. She's
I am.
U.S. citizen.
Thank you. Thank you.
You go back to your work? Okay. See you soon. So she's working in the next room. I have her, generally get her in there sorting coal and other menial work to bring in a little bit of extra money. But it was good to see her again. A lot of people haven't seen her in a while. She's real. Many Happy New Years coming in, Natasha.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now get back to that asbestos removal job I put you on back. Anyway, so that's about it. Oh, congratulations, Roadrunner says our wedding anniversary is January 7th, and it'll be 45 years. That's considerably longer than ours. Anyway, thank you for all the kind words. So, you know what? Why don't we just jump into the questions, because I don't really have a whole lot to add to this. I am working on this Luke script. That's got to be out by by Tuesday or Wednesday. So keep this one relatively brief. But, it is the last show of the year. And I still have so many of these things back ordered I have to get up. I should probably just not worry about the sound and just post them like I used to. I mean, I really wanted them to sound better. But honestly, I think I've got 9 or 10 of them now in a row. And it just doesn't make sense anymore. Why don't I just get it through my head? It's like, just post them. Just don't do it anymore. It's an hour's worth of time to run them through the audio filter and then export them again. It's like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to post them all. To hell with it. Boom. Yeah, that was easy. Now that I made that decision, I wanted to improve the quality of the audio. But yeah, I've noticed that the audio quality is actually worse if the show is not actually available. So, I think that's probably what I'll do. Yeah, Roadrunner says improved quality on a Bill Whittle production, not necessary. Did you say not necessary when you meant to say not possible? Just curious. But anyway, what are your most let's take some quick ones from the peanut gallery here, and then we'll fly through the comment section and we'll get that figured out. Subtle Cougar says, what are you most optimistic about the new year? Where would you have us look for hope? I would have you look to a Ferris wheel for hope. This has been enormously valuable for me. The more I think about it, the more it's not happy I become, just the more comfortable I become. So just next time you're feeling kind of hopeless about this whole thing, just go and imagine a Ferris wheel, or you could go to YouTube and bring up video of a Ferris wheel or whatever. In any event, just picture a Ferris wheel and put yourself in one of the gondolas, and that is that's what comforts me. So if you just use that example, I'm coming off the top of my head as usual, which means essentially gibberish, but we're getting used to that by now. So basically, it's like yeah. What point on that Ferris wheel ride is the real point? Well, there is no point on the Ferris. Just assume it just keeps going round, 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 up. Right? Roadrunner says Ferris wheels have their ups and downs, which is, that's. Whoa, I get it. That's a double meaning. No, but seriously, the Ferris wheel is constantly in motion, and sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down. I think the one thing that would, if you really would like some hope, I think we are definitely still going down, but we're not going down as dramatically as we were. It's kind of like the solstices. Actually, the most dramatic drop is at the 90 and the 270 positions, because at the top the up and down motion just kind of rounds out like a sine wave, but here it's real dramatic. So I don't think so. I think the pace of decay is slowing, but the decay has not stopped yet. It's just we're getting pretty close to the nadir. See, because I can use that word because I know this is a special audience. I couldn't use that word in front of a progressive audience because they think I'd be talking about something that Hamas makes for dinner or something. But the nadir, the bottom, we're not there yet, but we will be, and then it'll be up. And so it's like, I think the lesson in this is, for me, once I really 100% bought into this cyclical theory of things, I've just come to realize that there's no part of the ride that's more real than others. And you may like going up better than you like going down, but you can't do the up without the down. You can't do the down without the up. It's a wheel. A better way to think of it is the way that they mentioned in the fourth turning, and that is that, seasons. Now, I should stress, in the interest of clarity and intellectual honesty, that when I talk about seasons, I'm talking about what I've read in books. Having grown up in Bermuda, Florida, and California, I have no real firsthand experience of seasons, but I've read about them. And so my understanding from the research is that winter can be really depressing for people. Now, when you live in hot climate, winter it's like, it's 3 months of air conditioning. So I've always liked the winter months because they're not really winter for me. But I know that it's tough, and I know the further north you get, the tougher it gets, not just because it gets colder, but because it gets darker sooner and the darker lasts longer. But I've never had to live with that. And so I know a lot of people don't like the coming of winter, which is inconceivable to me because I look forward to the coming of winter, but you get the idea. Anyway, the thing about the winter is, number one, there's nothing you can do about it. That's probably the most important thing. The second thing is you can't really appreciate the spring or the summer without the winter. And yeah, ask Natasha, who was born in Siberia, about winter. She's got a few stories to tell. And so it's just, honestly, it's just the way it is. That's what I find to be most hopeful about these things, is that it is, a lot of it's out of our hands. That's a relief. I just spent, 15 years trying to climb up the girder work of the descending side of the Ferris wheel. It's not just, no, man, you just can't do that. You can't stop it. It's going around. And the good news is that it does keep turning, and that's really the good news. Is nothing can stop the turning. It's not gonna stop. The seasons aren't gonna stop in the middle of winter. Ferris wheel's not gonna stop when we're down at the lowest point. Although, if you think about it, I've just made myself just marginally impressed. You think about the Ferris wheel ride, and you think about, oh God, here we come near the bottom, and so on. It might interest you to realize that the bottom of the Ferris wheel, where you get on and off, right? So if you don't go through the bottom of the Ferris wheel, you can't get on in the first place. So yeah, it's gonna all of the things that used to fill me with dread no longer fill me with dread. Where was it? There you go. A.K. Woody Fool says, the proverb, you can't prevent the winter, but you can knit a sweater. Exactly right. Just missed it. Somebody saying, yeah, problem with the winter is, Bills, it keeps getting colder, but it looks like it keeps digging like it's going to keep going. That's that linear thinking thing. I hope I'm right, and I hope that these guys are right. Certainly seems to be a lot of evidence for this cyclical thing. But if it is, then this is not a slope. It's not we're going downhill and it's just not going to stop. It's going to get worse and worse and worse forever. It's getting worse. It's what happens when you get to the bottom of an arc, and then we'll be at the bottom of the arc, and then it's going to be bad, and then it's going to be stressful, and then it'll start getting better. And when I say stressful, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be like, hey, party time. It's going to be nasty. But the thing I have noticed, as I've mentioned before, is that the people I've known who lived through not only these historical crises, but crises in general, is that they, as they get older, there always seem to be, their fondest memories seem to be the time of greatest hardship, because life is about something. And that's, that's important. It's purpose. There are bigger things than what we want to do right now. And when we get to do what we want to do right now all the time, then we all go kind of nuts. That's exactly what we're seeing. I think these glasses are going to become more or less inevitable from now on. I wish there was a way for me to fix I suppose I could just, well, I can't really do that. Hang on. There's probably a way for me to darken this puppy down enough so there's not so much reflection. But it's practically impossible to read it anymore. Eric says, do you find any value in New Year's resolutions? Not in terms of improving my personal behavior. I find entertainment value in them for other people. But that's about it. I'm actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Eric, this New Year's resolutions thing. I've noticed that as I get older, certain bad habits are getting more pronounced, and they're getting more pronounced more rapidly. I'm getting a real problem with anything shiny distracting me. It always did, but it's getting worse. These video shorts that are very sophisticated algorithms, making sure that once you see one of them, the next one you see is pretty much exactly what you want to see. I'm starting to develop a serious problem with these things. And on some level, that's actually good, because until it scares you, you're not going to do anything about it. I'm getting to the point now in fact, I'm at the point now where I'm actually scared about this. So once you get scared about things, then it becomes New Year's resolution time. Then it becomes time to say, okay, you gotta issue. You have to deal with this now. You don't get to pretend it's not real. It's definitely real. And a lot of it's just got to do with a great deal of external pressures, and you get trapped in this kind of loop where you got all these big plans for getting out of this mess, and they're just a project or two away, and then then that builds it up in the mind, and the more it gets built up in the mind, the more you kind of want to avoid it. Blah 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 blah. However, there just comes a time when you just have to realize it's like, okay, there's just not anything you can do about it except do something about it. That's it. So anti-reflective coating got for his glasses. That's an idea. That's actually a very good idea. People have often thought it's a vanity. It's like, I actually like the glasses. I think they look pretty cool. But you can't see without the glasses, you can't see all of the expression in these black eyes. Shark's got black eyes like a doll's eyes. Lifeless eyes. And then they roll back on you. And then the screaming starts. What a great actor. What a great character that was. It's like a doll's eyes. I wasn't aware of how dark these eyes are until I actually heard people saying you got eyes like a shark's eyes, like doll's eyes. I always considered them to be a lovely brown, but they're dark brown. I don't know whether it's a contrast on the camera. Let's find out. That's horrifying looking. See, there is a little brown there. A little bit of brown. A little bit of brown. But mostly just the kind of blackness you would expect from a dead soul kind of thing. So, anyway, what's that? I did. I hope everybody had a great Christmas, by the way. It's a little late to say that, but certainly did. I spent Christmas looking for. I spent Christmas Day. Got up early here, and I was looking for this. One of the very, very first things I did at PJTV, which was my favorite toys, and I'm wearing a Santa hat in front of a fireplace. And I was sure I had it on a backup drive, and it took me 3 hours to find all the backup drives, and I couldn't find it. And then I went looking for it online, like another hour, and next thing you know, it's noon or 1 o'clock on Christmas afternoon, and I did find something that I did post, if you've seen it, called Nation of Desire, which were some Christmas thoughts from back on 2010, I think. The other one was 2008. But looking at myself in 2010, I just realized, man, you're pretty chipper and happy. I realized, yeah, 2020 hadn't happened to me yet, and neither had the Clinton emails or the James Comey or the all the rest of the stuff. However, here we are. Not drinking myself under a bridge. And still fundamentally optimistic about this stuff, just because I've got to, mister. And whoever made the comment just went flying by, didn't get a chance to look at it, about me being allergic to, was it rednecks? Thank you for that. That meant quite a lot. All right, so let's see what we got here. Shark's eyes, got shark eyes, doll's eyes. Splinter says, Bill is far more charming on a live stream than he is on an episode of Right Angle. Shrug. But then again, I kind of have to be, right? I mean, it's one of the great insults of all time. It's like, something to the effect of, you're not as stupid as you look. But I mean, how could you be? That kind of backhanded compliment. Did I tell my engineer joke on Stress Free Lounge, or did I tell it on the backstage show? Because if I told it on the backstage show, I'll tell my engineer joke now. It's the only engineer joke I know. I heard it and made me laugh. If anybody can remember, if you don't remember and you've seen the last couple shows, then I didn't. I told it. I know I told it on the air once or twice. Might have been on the backstage show. Still waiting for the little ping. Good focus, but age spots. Yeah, these age spots, they're all going to go. By the way, 2024. I'm just right now. I am. You look so much better on camera. Really, yeah. I've got these. These on the Opal camera, I just look like I got leprosy. I've told all of my jokes on the show at this point. Well, there you go. So, 22. And the lighting helps a lot, but on the Opal camera, I honestly got, it looks like I got leprosy. And so you get older and you get these kind of scaly patches, and one or two of them, they get a little problematic, and you get them burned off with the liquid nitrogen, which is a damn clever idea, by the way, because liquid nitrogen kills the cells, but it doesn't kill the surrounding cells, unlike heat would. So anyway, you get the idea, right? So every now and then I go twice a year to dermatologist and just get the whole body scan thing, and stuff here is just age spots, But sometimes it can kind of, they get on their way to being, the kind of thing where they're going to get into trouble if you leave them alone for a while. So I'm actually looking at this like, I'm tired of filling the potholes. I actually think that in 2024, I'm just going to repave the street. I'm just going to have all of this crap just burned off with a laser beam. And I'm not going to waste members' money by having an expensive California procedure done. I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm going to build myself a massive laser, and I'm going to get a mirror. And over my shoulder, I'll practice a little bit, and I'm just gonna burn those puppies just right off of there. No, I'm not doing the Botox. No, no, no. I'm not going that way at all. Let me bring Mike back into range here. Who was I? Was just somebody I saw who looked. Tom Cruise is obviously had work done, but he's allowing himself to age well. I think he looks better in Maverick than he did in Top Gun, personally. But man, it's like just about everybody is just succumbing to this thing, and Joe Rogan actually did an interesting little bit on this. He was talking about Madonna, and oh dear Lord. Yeah, it's especially prevalent out here. I mean, you would have Beverly Hills, and it's like these creatures have all come out of the same saucer. They all look exactly the same. Who did I see recently with this? Oh, come on. And it did not make me happy. I think it was, I'm going to confirm this, not that I'm a gigantic fan exactly, but still. Yeah, so Natasha and I were coming back from a little cruise around not too long ago. It looks like the case. What, seriously? Doggone it. Don't worry, it's just a reactor. Yep. I'm going to get one more for confirmation. And it looks like, so we saw this billboard. And it was for like a new game show or something. Oh dear. Oh dear. So, yeah, so we looked over at the billboard, and all I could see from the billboard, oh no. Wow. Well, I don't understand this. Here, I'll pop this into the thing. So we looked over at this billboard, and it was a game show hosted by Cheekbones. That's all I could see. I was some distance away, and all I could see was two, like somebody had put Tootsie Roll Pops under the skin here like this. And I said, who is this freakish gentleman? It turns out it was Rob Lowe. And I said, it can't be Rob Lowe. No, surely not. Rob Lowe, when he was on Parks and Recreation, this guy's aging gracefully. Rob Lowe? No. So I just looked up Rob Lowe plastic surgery, and brace yourselves, because this is just plain mentally ill. There you go, folks. One of the best looking guys that ever lived. He says he wanted a new life, and hang on, YouTube, we're coming. And that's the new life. Honestly, I will not ever understand this. Ever understand this. It has never worked. I've never ever seen it work. I could bump into that guy and have no idea who it is, and all of them. Of all of these things where you just, Kenny Rogers and all of them. Burt Reynolds, when Burt Reynolds died, he looked like a Chinese grandmother. And you see this, you just think, honestly, what is the matter with you? Don't you have friends? But apparently not. And Carrot Top, anyway, I don't particularly care much about Carrot Top, but it's just this, it's so diseased, to just this constant, I guess what I'm saying is, you're not fooling anybody. Rogan said, you don't look young, you look like an alien, and sometimes most of the time, you change your look so much that you cannot connect this face to the face that you grew up loving, or liking or admiring or whatever. Renee Zellweger and on and on and on. They just hit a certain age, and of all of them, the one that broke my heart the most was Meg Ryan when Meg Ryan just suddenly appeared and she had the perfect Cupid's bow lips, and then Meg Ryan appears with these huge cheekbones, beasting lips, and it's just, I'm thinking, what is this mass psychosis? What is this? I mean, Road Rider points out Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson, everybody knew Michael Jackson was bat guano crazy, and Bruce Jenner as well. But honestly, Rob Lowe and I just don't get it. It can't be done, man. It cannot be done. It can be done. Witness Raquel from the early 2000s, but I bet it's ridiculously spendy. Well, spendy or not, they've got the spendy. I don't know why you would consider trading your face. It's like, I can either look like me older, or I can look like a space alien that also looks old. It's not a good look. It's not like, hey, I'm somebody different, but I'm somebody young. I can just join this club of these lunatics. It's madness. Madness, I say. Now, I don't know. I wouldn't be above doing a little minor cosmetic surgery, here and there, anything. These teeth, they're not my teeth and stuff. But, if you start playing with the eyes, man, it's all over. So I'm just thinking just a new nose. This nose is a little bit too, it's just a little too big for me. I'm envisioning a nose about that big. Come like from the bridge of the nose down to about here. So I take off like the bottom half, let's say. Just something nice and delicate. And then, I need the big lips, because you want to maintain a sexy look throughout your sunset years. And these rocket sled facelifts haven't improved much. These things. Anyway, I don't know what the hell brought that up, but I was just sad to see it. And I don't know, and even like, I think what happens is you have the surgery and you look awful for years, and then over time, as your facelift ages, you start to look less alien. I'll give you a good example about that, and that's Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson had a facelift done, and it was like, what the, honestly, man. Putin has had a horrible one, all these people. I do not get it. Remember when John Kerry got his after he lost in 2000 and, come on, but you can do it. 4? Remember that? He just, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? I don't know if anybody else got it. I got it in the Twitch stream. Roadrunner just wrote "you rang," but I didn't read it as "you rang." Obviously, when I saw it, I read it as "you rang." Lurch was great. Ted Cassidy was great. He was just a really cool guy. He was a really, really cool guy, and you rang. I think it's my favorite part of the Addams Family are the names, Lurch and Uncle Fester. That's just perfect. No, I didn't get to meet Ted Cassidy, and he's brothers with wasn't he Jaws' older brother, Richard Kiel? Is that his name? Wasn't that his older brother? I think they were brother team. There's some big boys. Those actually one of the few times where I imagine hand-me-downs would actually work for somebody like Richard Kiel. Yes, he was in Star Trek. Ted Cassidy was in Star Trek. In fact, Ted Cassidy has a couple of interesting scenes in Star Trek. He's a good actor, and he has some scenes with Kirk that are very good. What an awesome voice! All right, let's get this thing done here. Everybody's dying off. I've noticed that, real Swamp Witch. What's alarming, especially, is not only that people are dying off, but the ones that are still surviving are getting to look like old people, and I find this quite alarming. I don't know why it hasn't affected me, but nevertheless, it's I'm not liking the trend lines. You know what I'm saying? Richard Burton says, I think the Rob Lowe picture was from his makeup photo for the movie Liberace. I hope so. I do. I hope so. Would that be nice? Sometimes it's nice when you find out that you just ended up. What I should have checked the date first. 2013. Well, thank you very much. See, that's what happens when you work on the internet. Good. Still never. That's so that was all for the movie. Great. That's fantastic. But I still saw him, and he still had the cheekbones done. So in any event, it was not as bad as I thought. Hooray! Yes, here he is. This is what I saw. I didn't see what I showed you. This is what I saw. I said the lighting's not really perfect for this, but here's cheeky cheek. Here's cheeky cheekbones. Rob Lowe. Come on. Okay, you want to be like that? Fine. I'm over Rob Lowe. I'm done with the subject. I don't know. So if you see me in 2024 and I say, welcome to the Stress Free Lounge, I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and there appears to be a 55-year-old Chinese reptile grandmother, then you know that everything I said so far was just sheer plain mendacity. Let's go to BillWhittle.com. What do we got here? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Who's that fine-looking dude? We're not logged into my own website. So what's happened here? No, howdy, Bill Whittle. Where'd it go? Oh my God! Somebody's messed with the. Okay. Well, something else for me to get on. Hang on. The pull-down menu for the people saying they can't see their posts, so that's just gone. I didn't touch it, but it's gone. Hooray. I kind of plan to live forever too. I expect. Honestly, how it's enough to make a grown man weep is what it is. All right, so I have to get. I don't. And how long has this been the case? I don't know. Anyway, what I'm reacting to is the members pull-down menu from the top of our website is gone. I asked the developer to put together a new template for the standard post. Very clear on my instructions, and now that's not there, so now I have to go. God, see, this is the kind of thing that makes me kind of nuts. Damn it. All right, let's try this. This is alarming. This is extremely alarming. This is just really the kind of thing that just takes the heart out of you. You know, it's like, are you genuinely kidding me? Good night. Trying to find the page here. Sorry. Here you go. That is just so damn bloody annoying. Honestly, it's enough to make me. Let's try this. There it is. Oh, congratulations. If you have access to the back end of the BillWhittle.com website and you spend a few half hour or so learning WordPress, you'll be able to get to your forum just like that. Doggone it. Well, I know what I'll be doing right after that. All right, so here we go. Thank you again, Eric, for moderating. We've got an Eric Blake, we've got a Roy Juarez, we've got a Joseph Pomeroy, Steve Young, got a Roadrunner. We can get through those. We can do those. All right, well, let's do them in order. Let's start with Eric Blake, the man with a hat, et cetera, and so on, et al. So, Bill, Emperor Xi Jinping has been verbally saber-rattling, saying he will be taking Taiwan. So what are we to make of this in light of the election next November? Xi is many things, but he's not an idiot. So at the very least, he's got to allow for the very likely possibility that Trump will end up back in office. So do you think that Xi will make his move this year while a weak buffoon is still in charge, or is he just bloviating to see our reaction? One of the things I've learned about nations, Eric, certain kinds of nations anyway, not just nations, people. It's a there is a strategy. I think it's a poor strategy, but nevertheless, I don't make these decisions. So there is a strategy for there's a strategy that a weaker partner in any two or multi-part transaction will use, and it's the strategy of appearing stronger than you are. This is why cats will arch their back and turn sideways, which is adorable in cats, not so much in Chinese totalitarian dictators. But they're trying to look as imposing as possible. They're basically trying to push you back and prevent you from attacking them by appearing to be so warlike and so aggressive that instead of thinking offensively, you start thinking defensively. When you think about, so China is essentially, there's some minor changes on the more recent, and even those are not very, very impressive. So China's military consists of Russian equipment, Soviet equipment, that's got a bar painted on the edges of the Red Star. That's it. They have some new destroyers that are essentially modeled after the Arleigh Burkes, but I'm not convinced of their fighting ability at all. But in any event, pretty much everything they have is Russian design. The Russians, in fact, sold them licensed them the design. I want to say what was it for? Was it for them? I know that the Russians refused to extend them a license for something else that they wanted because the Chinese had just plain copied what they'd taken. So anyway, you get the idea, right? So here's the point I'm trying to make. Vladimir Putin's not had tremendously out-of-the-box success with his invasion of Ukraine. And in order to invade Ukraine, all he had to do was cross an imaginary line in the dirt. He could put his tanks and his mass, as many tanks, men, trucks as he wanted to on the other side of this imaginary line in the dirt. And when go time came, he had to simply start up those engines and drive those hundreds and thousands of tanks and troops and all the rest of it across an imaginary line in the dirt. To invade Taiwan, you don't have to cross an imaginary line in the dirt. You have to cross a significant amount of open ocean. And if it turns out that Russia cannot supply a force that can take Ukraine quickly, as he thought he would, if he's not able to do that, then the idea that the Chinese would be able to not only mass sufficient force to deal with the Taiwanese, but to get them across the straits, it's just nuts. And especially after the Ukraine invasion, we discovered that tanks ain't what they used to be. It's only 70 miles. Well, that's true, Steve, but the English Channel is only 20 miles. And the English Channel was more than enough to keep Adolf Hitler out of Britain. After the war was over, a lot of people had this figured out at the time, but after the war was over, it was clear that Hitler never seriously considered the invasion of Britain. I'm not saying he didn't want to, and I'm not saying he didn't have a plan for it, Sea Lion, Operation Sea Lion. But the German plan to invade Britain consisted of towing barges, not landing craft, not self-propelled landing craft, just towing barges. And in order to even begin to think about this, they had to have control of the air over the English Channel, which they got for a week or two, and then the RAF rallied and so on. But the Royal Navy was always there. That's 20 miles of relative. When I say calm seas, I'm just saying it's not exposed the way that the Straits of Taiwan are. It can get rough in the English Channel. The North Sea is notoriously bad-tempered, but essentially you can see you can see the target. It's like going to Catalina. But that was enough to stop the Nazis. And my point is, even if they could get everything ashore, how much could they get ashore? What percentage of their total forces could they actually transport by sea? And secondly, of that percentage of their forces, tanks, the old great tank, she ain't what she used to be. When one guy with a javelin and a reloader, a Humvee with a guy with a javelin and 6 tubes in the back can take out 6 state-of-the-art tanks, then you got to understand what the Russians had to cross an imaginary line in the dirt from one side to the other. They have to cross open ocean, have to load and unload things. And not only do they have to do that, Russia attacking Ukraine is a relatively poor country. Taiwan is not. Taiwan is armed to the teeth and have been forever. It just seems it's utterly inconceivable to me that they could possibly succeed, even if the United States sat it out. Even if we sat it out, I don't see any way that the Chinese could pull this off. I just can't. They don't have that kind of power. And so when you hear him saying we're definitely going to take Taiwan, it is saber rattling. That's where the term comes from. It's a strategy of a weak party trying to appear more capable than it is, which is why Teddy Roosevelt, who was instrumental in getting us the beginning of an actual Navy, said pretty much exactly the opposite is what you should do. You should walk softly and carry a big stick. In other words, you don't need to go bragging. You don't need to go strutting around. Don't need to be telling everybody you're going to do this or you're going to do that. Just mind your own business, eat your salad at the dinner table, listen to other people talk, and have a plan to kill everybody you meet. That's really what that's what it comes down to. I don't see any way that mainland China could edge out, could get their troops off the beach of Taiwan. The most sophisticated computer chips in the world are made in Taiwan. Taiwan is not Ukraine. Taiwan is an extraordinarily per capita rich, extremely technologically advanced country, and I just don't see it. Furthermore, while the Chinese Navy has been growing alarmingly in terms of its size, I'm seeing are the Taiwanese armed? They are. And unlike the Japanese in 1945, who were preparing to stop the U.S. invasion with bamboo spears, these Taiwanese are not using bamboo spears. They're going to be using extraordinarily sophisticated state-of-the-art weapons technology. So it's just the Taiwanese citizens, I don't know. Dave, I get the feeling that when you live under the shadow of this kind of threat for your entire existence, there are plans within plans. I just can't see possibly how it could happen. I thought it was unlikely prior to Ukraine. After Ukraine, I just think I just want to be careful about this because I don't really mean this, but on some strange sort of level, I kind of do. I would really honestly like to see him try. Only because I think it would do for China what the invasion of Ukraine did for Russia, which is utterly discredit their capability in the eyes of the world. Now, American capability is being utterly discredited in the eyes of the world, but fortunately, that's a top-down issue, not a bottom-up issue. One election could get this U.S. military back into extraordinarily lean condition and clear this rot out rather fast, rather quickly. As I've said many times on this show and others, if I was defense secretary or if I was the president, the first thing I would do is I would just simply close the Pentagon. I would sell the property and turn it into a gigantic, enormous year-round roller skating rink, and I am very tempted. Got to be careful about absolutist statements, but in this case, having given this some thought, I think that in order to avoid any accusations of partisanism or partisanship or whatever, if I was given the task of as president or advising the president on how to rebuild the military, I believe I would fire every single flag officer. I think I'd cashier every one of them. I really do. That would be generals and admirals for sure. Colonels and is Commodore still around? No, not a Commodore. We don't stop rank. Commodore rank, do we? No. There are some colonels and naval captains, obviously, who are tainted, but most of them are okay. See, the thing about by the way, I wasn't asked to keep this under my hat, so it's good news. Got an email last week, and then I had a phone call today based on the email. I hope everybody who knows me is sitting down for this shocking news. But it looks like yours truly is going to be doing an episode of PragerU, which makes me the last resident of Los Angeles who will be doing a video for PragerU, but I don't mean that to sound as nasty as it does. I'm just actually very happy about that. Yeah, commanders, but naval captain outranks a commander. And they called me and asked me to do one, and they said we're doing a series on presidents, and we would like you to do Lyndon Johnson. And I thought, Lyndon Johnson? And then I said, oh, Lyndon Johnson. I learned a lot about Lyndon doing the Cold War stuff. So I talked to them on the phone today pitch the whole thing, and looks like we'll shoot it in April. So I'll be doing Lyndon Johnson for them. But while we were talking about Lyndon Johnson and the military and fighting and all the rest of that stuff, and how badly done, how the Vietnam War was a perfect storm of vanity, control freak, narcissism, toadyism, and all the rest. You can't understand the Vietnam War without understanding the relationship between Lyndon Johnson and Bob McNamara. Westmoreland was basically just the errand boy sent by a grocery clerk to collect an overdue bill. But basically, the Vietnam War, first half of the Vietnam War was fought as badly as it was because Bob McNamara was approached to be defense secretary by John F. Kennedy. John Kennedy and Bob McNamara both went to Harvard, among other places. They were both golden boys. They were both bright, establishment, fast-tracked, rich kid golden boys. And so Kennedy didn't have a particular intellectual inferiority complex relative to McNamara. Kennedy knew how to handle McNamara. But and to his credit, McNamara turned down the job. He said, I don't know anything about being defense secretary. And Kennedy said, we'll learn together, which is not the most striking piece of wisdom I've ever heard come from a president of the United States, saying, yes, you and the Secretary of Defense and the president will learn how to do this together. I would have gone the other route personally, but in any event. So when Kennedy's assassinated, Johnson keeps McNamara, and Johnson hated not just McNamara and Kennedy, because he hated Kennedy too. Johnson had a instinctive, atomic level contempt for these pretty boys at Ivy League schools. And to his credit, while John Kennedy and the rest of them were, out doing swanky parties, Lyndon Johnson, as a very young politician, was stomping around in the dust of southern Texas in 110-degree heat, trying to improve condition for kids in all Spanish-speaking kids in American schools here on the other side of the border. But Johnson knew that McNamara was much smarter than him, but unlike Kennedy, Johnson didn't have the intellectual chops to tell him where he was wrong, and it didn't suit him to. This is the thing about Johnson. Johnson liked the fact that he could offload the responsibility to the eggheads. in the discussion I had today with Alan, the producer at Prager, he pointed out something that I'd missed when I wrote the Cold War thing. He said that Johnson was a stage one thinker. He would say, we're going to do this, do it. And there'd be no discussions about what the consequences would be or how to get it done or what might go wrong. Just do it. So basically McNamara became president of Ford Motor Company, right? He was the first of these computer guys, the first of these guys that come in with management that basically said, oh, well, we don't have to make better cars. What we have to do is we have to reduce inefficiencies. We'll bring in efficiency experts, and if we move these two stations together closer on an assembly line, we'll save this many man hours of work, you see, and that'll save us money. And whiz kids, yes, thanks. And that's how we'll increase our profits, not by making better stuff, but by reducing waste, by increasing efficiency. And so McNamara went at the job of Secretary of Defense as an efficiency expert. And by the time Kennedy was assassinated, they kind of held just kind of a stasis between 1963 and Gulf of Tonkin. And once the Gulf of Tonkin happened, and Johnson got his Gulf of Tonkin resolution, you've got a guy who's ruthless, knows exactly what he wants, vain, jealous, and micromanaging, who is listening to a guy who said there are no such things as crises, only what was it? You think I'd know the quote if I'm going to repeat it? Only management opportunities, something along the lines, right? So basically, what happens in the Vietnam War is, at least the first half of it, Johnson says we got to do something about this invasion, and he's right. You can't just let that go. And so he says to McNamara, do something so that we win the war. McNamara goes back to his computers. That's right. Thank you, Dave Big Booty. Thank you. Yes, the Secretary of Defense, Bob McNamara, had said that there's, whilst Defense Secretary under Kennedy, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, McNamara said there's no such thing as strategy, there is only crisis management. What a profound statement that is to come from the guy who's responsible for the strategy of the defense of the United States. We haven't had a strategy, by the way. We haven't had a national strategy since Reagan. That was the last time anybody was in the Oval Office who had a strategy, had a plan. Everybody else was just reacting, including Eisenhower. Reagan was the only guy who had actual strategy. That strategy was: we win, they lose. Where do we excel? What's their weakest point? What's our strongest point? Oh, it's not on the battlefield with the tanks? No, sir. No, it's in high technology and our power of our economy. We've got 30 times the economy that Russia has. Well, then let's not fight them on the battlefield. Let's bankrupt them. Yeah, sounds great. That's strategy. Anyway, so McNamara would come back with his computer printouts. And it's important for younger people to understand that we're not talking about AI here. We're talking about a spreadsheet. That's basically what we're talking about. McNamara comes up with this formula and says that in order to regain this province that we've lost to the Viet Cong, let's say, it's going to take 40,000 men. If you throw in 60,000 men, we can do it in 3 months. And if you throw in 100,000 men, we can do it in 1 month. That's what the computer printout says. Okay, so now we know just how much lives we have to input on one end, and the computer has told us what the result will be, and so we just have to listen to the computer. That's basically how the war was run. And then you give this to a guy like Westmoreland, who I will charitably describe as a administrative type general rather than a battlefield commander. And Westmoreland basically says, okay, so we're really just talking about ratios here, right? I mean, it's just that simple. The computer printout says that we will be able to do this or win the war or take over this, and in 6 months, if we kill this many of those people, we have a rough idea how many Vietnamese there are, and if we kill 180,000 of them, then we'll win the war, whatever the number is, whatever the number says. So he'll say, all right, so all we have to do now is, in order to kill the 8,000 Vietnamese we need to kill this month, that'll only cost us 900 American lives. That was it. That's so 900 American lives are not 900 soldiers' lives are fed into the meat grinder, and those boys never come home. But as long as the body count is high and the kill ratio is good, yes, we lost 60 American soldiers today killed. We lost 120 yesterday. But fortunately, while we lost 120 of our kids killed, they lost 630. And there's more of us than there are of them. So if we continue at this rate, then we'll win the war in at least 10 years. And so there it goes, right? When have we ever fought a war like that, ever? Well, it's a civil war probably, I guess. What we don't fight, that's how Russia fights. You throw men at the problem and you keep throwing people at it until you win. Our attitude is we should the way we should fight the war is the objective is, I know this is ridiculous, but this would be my objective, would be to win the war with 0 casualties on our side. I don't care about their casualties. They can stop their casualties anytime by surrendering. How do we win this war without getting anybody killed? Now, I know, we all know that's not possible, but that's what the objective should be. And that's how American defense has been since the Vietnam War. We're going to pay big money for very expensive weapons. And if we have to, was it Bill Clinton said, if we have to send a $7 million missile to go blow up a camel in the middle of the desert someplace under a tent, that's what we'll do. But we went with quality over quantity. It was a wise decision because our people are valuable to us. And all of this stuff is stitched together. I know this may sound like, what does this have to do with the Taiwan thing? But it's directly related to Taiwan. People will fight when they're afraid of their masters. The Persians would whip their army of slaves into battle, and they'd fight because they didn't want to get whipped or beheaded. But they don't fight the way that volunteers fighting for an ideal fight. Nobody fights like that. So when we start cutting corners on that contract, the contract being we will spend every dollar we have and every ounce of energy we have to rescue anybody. We leave nobody behind. When we start messing around with that, the whole thing falls apart, which is why the Benghazi thing was the most infuriating thing I've seen since that aged me more than 2020. When I found out that there were rescue, well, I don't say rescue teams, there were reinforcements in helicopters on pads with the rotors going. The rotors going. Their guys are geared up and ready to go. They're on alert. These guys are not conscripts. They've waited, trained their whole life for this. They're sitting in their helicopter. Most of those guys out there are their friends, and they are in the helicopters and they're waiting for the go code. They got an 80-minute flight or whatever to get Benghazi, and then Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton decide, no, we don't want to escalate. They're probably dead already anyway. Or they will be by the time we get there. So stand them down, and what would that have been like to be a warrior who's trained his whole life to go fight for his country? You've got your friends over there. There's no moral ambiguity about this. An embassy has been overrun by armed murderers. Embassy and ambassadors and heralds are ancient concepts of immunity morally. So, okay. What does that feel like when you're in the helicopter and you're ready to go and the guy turns around and says, we're not going, we're shutting it down? What do you mean we're shutting it down? We've been ordered to not go. That's what got me to do that 2012 speech. That made me it blew my mind. That's when I said, well, if I'd been president, I would have said, like every other president, where's the nearest carrier? And it would have been relatively close because that's a hot spot. And I said, okay. There's not much we can actually... It's nice for the president to have a fundamental knowledge of military capabilities, right? A fundamental knowledge. I mean, if I'd been president during the Benghazi thing and somebody said, well, here's the situation, Mr. President, we got 6 guys or 4 guys or whatever on a roof of the embassy building, then that's telling me, okay, well, we're not going to be able to go in there and drop precision weapons on this situation. This whole thing is incredibly fluid. We can't just lob cruise missiles at it. What the hell do we do? What I said live when I was thinking this problem through was, okay, so we're going to have to get. These guys aren't in a bunker, and they're not in a reinforced or fortified position surrounded by enemies. We just go in and just lay down some fire on them. We're not entirely sure where they are. They're moving around on the roof of the embassy. There's only 4 of them and so on. Okay, I get it. So we can't just go in there and start JDAMing the thing. So what the hell do we do? Well, let's get some helicopters in here. Get them. I don't want to. They should be on their way while we're having this discussion. If we want to, we can turn them around. They should be on their way now. I want them in the air now. And I want them there at full speed. Meanwhile, it's going to take them an hour to get there, 80 minutes in a helicopter. What do we do for them from now? I said, find out where our nearest carriers are, find out where the nearest combat air patrol is. If they've got anything airborne, great. If not, get something airborne right away. Launch the alerts. I want F-18s over Benghazi, and I want them at Mach 1.5 or 1.1, 1.01. That's fine with me. I want F-18s over that city, and I want them 600 feet AGL, and I want to break every goddamn window in that city. I want them to know that the sky gods are coming and that we're very angry. And I want, more than anything, I want the guys on the roof. I want those guys who are fighting for their lives. I want them to hear those jets come over and let them know that we're coming. And if we get there in time, great. And if we don't get there in time, well, we still get there. But nope. So we don't do things like that. We just back off, and that's what allows idiots and tyrants like Xi Jinping to say, we're going to take Taiwan. Yeah, I remember saying, I want them over that city. I want to break every window in that town. And if they don't like it, they can bill us. And I'd pay. Because you put those, many of you, I don't know how many of you have actually heard a sonic boom. And if you have, some of you have heard a sonic boom from a distance. But a sonic boom up close is not, it commands your full attention. I was at Edwards Air Force Base when the shuttle landed there, which it did occasionally. We're all looking up, trying to find the shuttle. And, I thought it'd be a little speck, and we're looking around, and, it was like somebody fired a .45 automatic right behind my head. Just boom! I mean, it's like, it, man. Well, in LA, when the shuttle would come in, I don't know if it was every approach, couldn't have been. Maybe just when it was coming into Edwards. Not sure about that. Probably just when it's coming into Edwards. But many times during the course of the shuttle program, I'd be sitting in my apartment, shuttle flights going on all the time, and it, like somebody backed the truck into this building. It's exactly what it felt like. All the apartments here are made out of wood because of flex during an earthquake. I was sitting there, and boom! So, what the hell was that? Well, it was a sonic boom from the shuttle. Yeah, Bart's Treasure says a real sonic boom thuds you in the chest and the ground literally shakes. That would get their attention. And more importantly, would get our guys' attention. And the nice thing about sonic booms is these are not things that you carry underneath the wings of the F-18 and you can run out of stores as long as you keep yourself refueled. You put sonic booms over that thing nonstop. That's what I would do. That was my off the top of my head instinctive reaction was, all right, I want jets making a racetrack circle over the city. I want sonic booms every 15 seconds. And the more jets you can get there, the more you can do it. Just keep them going, keep them supplied, get them tanked, bring new ones up, retire the old ones. We don't want to lose anybody due to a fuel exhaustion. Just get them there now and get them over the city and keep making noise. Do that. Boom. Just boom, 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 boom. Scare the piss out of these guys. Make them think that the world is ending. That's what I want to do. And then our helicopters will get there, and then we'll make short work out of these clowns. That's what you do when you have confidence in yourself. We didn't pick that fight. I don't think we picked any of the fights. So that's what I would have done. And I certainly, the second I heard there was trouble, trouble. The second I heard that there were people, armed people outside the gates before they stormed the compound, the second I heard that there was that kind of trouble, I would have said, get the helicopters in the air, get them on their way, and always bring them back. good training mission, if nothing else, right? If the whole thing turns out to be a bust, turns out that no, there's really no danger, the whole thing's just a show, or they're bluffing, or they're not bluffing, or you just get them going, get them on their way. And then if it turns out we don't need them, pull them back, hover, just orbit off the coast for a while. If that'll give us a chance to get another set out there. Be ready, man, be ready to go. But nope, not only not ready to go, but told to stand down. I still can't think about this without getting furious. And as I've said many times, I would much rather have a United States military. We have 11 carrier battle groups now. And we are so determined to destroy the military from within that we keep producing advertisements that have no explanation. There's no other explanation for advertisements like the infamous animated army one with the woman with her 2 lesbian parents who were out there in the streets protesting for equity. There's no possible explanation for that other than intentional destruction of military morale. There's no rational person on the earth, and certainly no testing, that would ever show that, yes, we're going to get our recruitment goals by bringing in San Francisco children of lesbians. That's our primary recruitment sector. So it's just done intentionally that ad is not there to recruit. That ad is there to deter the kind of people that want to go into the military to kick ass. That's what that ad is for. If you have any doubts about it, you can find a way to explain it to me. I'd love to change my mind. But I can't think of any other reason for anything other than this. I get to pass on a pretty near daily basis. I get to pass a billboard, giant billboard. It's a woman in a helmet, and it's like, your place in the Marine Corps. That's it? Your place in the Marine Corps. They're trying to sell it as kind of a social circle now. They really are. They're trying to say, here's a kind of a cool chat group you could join. I'm not making this up. It's like your place in this, or here's where you can find your. It's just like this cannot be accidental. It can't be. You're allowed to make one bad decision, but you just, as far as advertising goes, no. So I'd rather have, instead of 11 carrier battle groups armed, staffed, crewed by people like this, I'd rather have 8 or 5 that were fully crewed by the most switched on, dedicated, badass, hard-working, motivated sons of daughters of bitches in the planet. And since I'm on a roll and since it's coming up on New Year's Eve, I'm a big believer in free speech, needless to say. But I don't think this is unreasonable. I would not apply this to members of the military who made comments in private in civilian clothes. They have the freedom of expression like all the rest of us. But I would definitely have no problem as the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military immediately cashiering with a dishonorable discharge any member of the military that spoke negatively of the country while they were in uniform. That's an important distinction. And if you don't have that distinction, you're heading for real trouble. But anybody who criticizes the United States or its economic system or anything, if they did that in uniform, they are immediately out. Dishonorable discharge, out. Red Runner says they don't have the same rights. They're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, not the Constitution. Exactly right. But I don't mean to minimize what you just said there, but I'm not going to split hairs about this in terms of public image, in terms of the optics of it, right? In terms of the optics. I'm just going to say, because you do have to deal with the public. Hey, you have a right to free speech. You don't have a right to free speech in uniform. Because when you're in uniform, you are speaking for the uniform, whether you like it or not. If you don't like that, then you probably shouldn't wear the uniform. After you've retired, that's fine. But I would rather have a military that's a quarter this size filled with patriots rather than one that's unreliably almost said contaminated. That's probably a better word, really. But yes, unreliable. This is what people have often discussed. We should bring the draft back. That'll show these Gen Zers, it's like, I think that's the last thing we need right now, is another, didn't we try this before in Vietnam? Where you end up having, you've got people who do more damage than good. Our military's not big enough for the jobs that we have, but I'd still rather have an even smaller one that was capable and lethal than this. All of these things, see, this is the thing. It's like all of these are self-inflicted. That's the bad news. The bad news is all this stuff is self-inflicted. Good news is once you stop self-inflicting it, once Gulliver decides to get up, then the Lilliputians can't do a damn thing about it. Once he decides to get up, it's all over. So anyway, hope that helped, Eric. Moving on. I'm bummed out about that pull-down menu. Huayraris, Merry late Christmas, Bill, and to you as well, Ray. Thank you for saying so. I was thinking of how the captain always goes down with the ship, like you mentioned in the backstage episode. We haven't talked about the, I think it's my episode, where this coming right angle episode, or I think I talk about, maybe it was just backstage. Honestly, I don't remember. I was talking about the sinking of the Oceanos, the ocean liner that went down 1991. It was in rough seas, bad seas, Greek crew, and the passengers were all in the lounge. Now, this was a small cruise ship, especially by today's standards, but it was a luxury cruise ship. And they were in rough seas, and most of the passengers are in the lounge, and there's a musical act there, a husband and wife musical act up there, and then there's like this big thud, and the ship starts taking on a list, and a little break in the power, and they start looking around for the crew, trying to find out what's going on, and the crew has left the vessel. They're gone. The entire crew just bailed. The captain wanted to bail. I don't think he could find a spot, but in any event, the crew was not to be found, and the ship was taken on water. And so this husband and wife team, whose names I should have memorized, I should have the names of certain people tattooed on my cheat code area here, so that I don't forget them. The husband and wife team musician kept the people calm and went up to the bridge of this cruise ship to inquire with the captain about what was going on with the ship and why can't we find any of the other crew members. And the bridge was deserted, and so this musician found a way to get the radio going and basically sent out a call saying, "This is the Oceanos, we're in distress." And the guy said, got a reply back from a ship that was in the area, and he says, "Okay, what's your position?" And he says, "I don't know how to find our position. I don't know what our position is." And the other captain gets really furious. He says, "What's your rank?" He says, "I don't have a rank." "What do you mean you don't have a rank?" I play guitar. I'm an entertainer. There is no crew on board the ship." So then the other captain talks them on how to get the position. So they get the rescue teams out there and the helicopters. Turns out that there's 500 or 600 passengers, something like that. This husband and wife musician team, a magician who was also on the cruise, I'm pretty sure all three of them are American, and one other guy, 4 entertainers, managed to get all of the passengers in one place. The guitar player was swinging out lifeboats. He doesn't know how to do this. It's not automatic. You got those divots, and it's not a simple procedure, especially when the ship starts listing. And this guy is out there, and he's got this lifeboat that's kind of banging against the hull a little bit because of the list of the ship, and he's standing there. He's got people loading, and he's cutting lines on this thing, and he's pushing. He's got one foot on the deck, the other foot on the lifeboat, and he's pushing with his legs to keep these things from banging into each other. So they get as many people off as they can, and then a bunch of people go into the water. Fortunately, it's off the coast of South Africa, so it's not freezing cold water, although I'm sure sharks were an issue. But by now, fortunately, helicopters are arriving and rescue teams are arriving. And then the magician is in a rubber dinghy with a guy from the Navy, one of the navies that came out there. And he's pulling scores of people out of the water who've been in life jackets. And it turns out that these 4 entertainers, I'm virtually sure all 4 of them were Americans, got every single passenger off the Oceanos. Every single one of them. And that, when I saw this on Fascinating Horror, which is a great YouTube channel, really beautiful, 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 elegant, well-researched, highly entertaining, well-produced channel, Fascinating Horror, takes a look at all of these catastrophes and things in a very, very sane and educational way. It's one of my favorite channels. They just talked about this, and he made the point of saying the Oceanos is in like 300 feet of water. And he said something I hadn't really thought about, but he's almost exactly right. He said, the Oceanos rests in 300 feet of water where nearly alone among shipwrecks, only the ship lies there and none of the people, not one of the people that were aboard it. Turns out that this American couple, 3 or 4 years later, were on board the Achille Lauro, and they did it again. It's not, this American exceptionalism thing is real. It's real. And we all see it eroding, and we want to just wail about it, but it's not so much disappearing as it's concentrating, there's fewer people who can do that, but they're still there. And when the Ferris wheel starts its upswing, not only will they come to the forefront, but a bunch of people who you never suspected ever will come to the forefront. Move the mic towards or away. Who was it that was I just reading the story, YouTube Shorts, which I have a real problem, as I mentioned earlier, there's a channel out there that does something. It sounds like McCullough's voice from the Civil War and it sounds like the Band of Brothers music. And it's a series of shorts about individual heroes in World War II. And one of them was and some of them are famous and others aren't. This one was somebody famous, and it was a Brit, and he was a conscientious objector until London got bombed. And then the next thing you know, he's out there doing miraculous things. See, having your city bombed like that will do it. Hey, Raiders. Here come the Raiders. Wow, hey, look at that. We're being raided. Fantastic. About time, too, by the way. Where have you been, you Raider slackers? So we're talking about, here come the Raiders. Okay, fantastic. So we're talking about military stuff as usual, and generally speaking, hail pirates. Here come the pirates. Hooray. Wow, look at that. Numbers are going crazy. They're going through the roof. People are pouring in by the thousands. We're talking about shipwrecks and Americans saving the crew of the Oceanos and water just coming aboard, much the way that the pirate raiders are coming aboard right now. Hooray. And good to see all of you folks here for the last show of the year. And stick around. You might have a good time, but that's not the way to bet. Anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Let's go back to wherever the hell we were before I lost my place, which is what I do for a living. Captain always goes down with the ship. See, he got one sentence out, and then I do half an hour. The rule seems so. Back to the question. I was thinking how the captain always goes down with the ship, like you mentioned in the backstage episode, talking about the Oceanos case, where, for those of you who are just arriving in your pirate outfits, ocean liner sank in 1991. The crew abandoned ship, didn't even tell the passengers, just left. And then 4 entertainers, I think all 4 of them American entertainers, got all 500 plus passengers off the ship before it went down. I was thinking about how the captain always goes down with the ship, like you mentioned in the backstage episode. The rule seems so subconscious for Westerners that I didn't even notice that it also applies to cars. No matter what side of the road you drive on, the driver always has the most dangerous exit on the street and is the first to be injured in a T-bone collision. Interesting. Do you think this philosophy applies to other areas of the world? In Micronesia, the king owned everything technically, but his first duty was to let everyone under him use all of his wealth to better themselves, and by extension, himself. A bad ruler hogged all the wealth and took no responsibility for bad harvests. Not a bunch of interesting questions there. Let's deal with the king thing first. It's better to have a good king than a bad king, but it's probably better to have no king, to have a system where you are not dependent on a lifetime roll of the dice. The entire idea behind democracy and a republic is that it should be self-correcting. You have a good king, hooray. You have a good Congress, hooray. You have a bad king, you're not only boned, but so are your children and your grandchildren. You have a bad Congress, presumably you have to put up with this for 2 years, at which point you can throw the bums out, which has been known to happen every now and then, but not nearly as often as it should. So my point here is whether the king should behave that way and be and use all of his power and wealth for the people underneath him. If that's how the king should behave, great. But if he's not bound to behave that way, then you're going to have problems. So that's just that. As far as the Westerners thing goes, I'm not entirely sure that is like an odd. I don't think it's an ideological or a philosophical or a moral state phenomenon. In other words, I don't think that they put the drivers on the side closest to danger because of a moral or philosophical decision. When cars drive on the right-hand side of the road, it's God intended. And by the way, it's hilarious when you hear British people talking about the metric system and how stupid we Americans are, and then we don't, buy into this scientific measuring system with all the romance of a antiseptic antibacterial wipe. But they're still driving on the left side of the road. But the point is, so if you're driving on the right side of the road, as God intended, the reason you are on the left side of the car is because it allows you to better judge distances between incoming traffic, which is where your primary threat is. And in a 2-lane highway, it's better to hit something on the right that's not moving than it is hit something on the left that is. So you want to be on the side closest to the opposing traffic, and that is what then leads to it being more dangerous in a parked car situation and more dangerous in a T-bone situation, and so on and so forth. But there are elements to this that are voluntary and moralist. I didn't discover this until I was probably in my 30s or 40s, but I was not able to walk down the street on a date or anything, certainly not with my wife, without being on the street side of the sidewalk. That's automatic for me. And if turns out we get out of a car or something like that, and that's not the arrangement, I make it the arrangement very rapidly because it makes me exceedingly uncomfortable otherwise. We're built a little tougher than women are, generally speaking. And furthermore, we're more easily replaced. So if somebody's going to jump a curb or splash some mud or whatever, the prevailing theory for those of you who are young, back in the day, young boys like me were taught that this is how life is supposed to be. And for those of you who are young ladies, you might appreciate this, that whenever walking down the sidewalk, the man is always on the traffic side of the sidewalk. So any debris or danger or anything that's coming off the road, he's going to block. Now, I've had, before I got married, I had one or two people arguing about this, which was a strong indication it wasn't somebody I particularly wanted to be seeing again. But in any event, I think on one or two occasions I said, well, after some discussion, you don't have to do this. I say, I don't have to do it. I don't have to do much of anything really, but I'm doing it. I want to do it. Well, why are you doing it? Once it started getting like in an argument, I would say, well, the reason I'm on the street side is because if a car jumps a curb and knocks us over, I got something soft to land on. But anyway, I don't have anything else on that, to be perfectly honest with you. So if that's it, I got nothing. Good to see you, though, and thank you for the kind words, Ray. Moving on. Cogitation spectacles. Okay, so Joseph Palmer has written quite a large thing here, but it looks interesting. And we got a little time, and it's the end of the year, so we're going to, by God, do it. Joseph Pomeroy, good evening, Bill. Hello, Joseph. Question: did the emphasis on selecting justices focused on overturning Roe v. Wade based on states' individual rights when selecting their stance on abortion turn the country towards Civil War II by rejecting the Texas versus PA case of 2020? End question. Well, my educated answer to that is I'm not 100% sure exactly what the Texas versus PA case of 2020 is. It may be what the decision was based on. Usually the smart thing to do when you don't know the answer is to say, I don't know the answer to that. But I do know a little bit about the rest of it. I maybe just naivete on my part. I would not say that the conservative justices were placed on the Supreme Court specifically because of the abortion issue. I like to think that they were selected on their understanding of restrictions on constitutional and respect for life that the Constitution is based on, and that their position on abortion arose from their broader position on values. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that I like to think that the Supreme Court, conservative justices on the Supreme Court, were not there. What's your deal on abortion? Yes or no? I just think that they're much more qualified than that. But the real question is, did it head us down the road towards Civil War II? I don't see how there's going to be a civil war in the well, look, I don't want to. This is what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of a definitional thing. There will not be a Civil War II in this country the way there was a Civil War I. In other words, we won't be shooting at each other because, as I've said many times, one of the things that Civil War I, the Civil War, made it was possible because 90% of the people who had one opinion lived on one side of a line, and 90% of the people who had the other opinion lived on the other side of a line. And when things look, or higher, and when things looked like they were about to go south, if you'll pardon the expression, then most of the 10% that didn't belong there crossed over. And so you basically had a dividing line, the Mason-Dixon line generally speaking, between the northern and southern states, where people north of that line had one philosophy and those south of the line had another. Here in modern America, this fault line runs through every single state. The bluest of the blue states is still 4 out of 10 people, generally speaking. Not 1 out of 20, 8 out of 20 voted for Trump, or whatever the case may be. And furthermore, you go to a football game, like I said many times, you can be sitting next to somebody at a Packers-Bears game, and if you're a Packers fan, person sitting next to you is a Packers fan, then it's you versus those god-awful Chicago Bears, and that person's politics has really nothing to do with it. It's not like that in terms of it. Now, semantics is the word I was looking for before. But semantically, you could argue that we've been in Civil War II for many years now because it's a cultural civil war rather than a shooting war. That's a whole different kettle of fish and so on. So did the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which, by the way, really, really surprised me, because I had thought that was simply impossible. I thought it was just impossible. And when it happened, I was, needless to say, pleasantly surprised. Shocked is a better word, really. I really just found it almost impossible to believe. So that was a tremendous win. Scott did a show. I don't know if it's aired yet. I've got a couple in the can. He talked about something that reduced in Texas. It reduced the number of abortions by something like 85-90% or something like that. Some incredible number. This whole subject is just so is so contaminated by advertising terms, pro-choice or pro-life. It's like, oh, I'm pro-choice. Well, I'm pro-life. Well, if I'm pro-life, that makes you pro-death. And if I'm pro-choice, that means you're slavery. They're advertising terms, and they don't help anything. Let's just call it what it is. You're either pro-abortion or anti-abortion. If you're ashamed to say it's pro-abortion, then that's saying something. And so this is an issue where the semantics rule the day. And once again, we are allowing these control freaks to do the only thing they know how to do well, and that is to manipulate language. So we have this argument about, my body, my choice. And I could not agree with that more. I'm 100% behind the my body, my choice thing. Let me see if you can see how this works. Here's how it works. What do you think about this? The pro-abortion people say, my body, my choice. What do you say about that, Mr. Conservative? And I say, I agree 100%. I could not agree more. Honestly, it's fundamental. Government can't tell you what to do with your own body. Could not agree more. It's a fundamental tenet of conservatism. So how can you possibly be taking an anti-abortion position? Because it's not your body. That's why. If we could simply get the argument to this point, then the argument would be over. Of course your body, your choice. Of course you have a choice to do with your own body. Of course I don't want the government telling you what you should do with your body. That's repugnant. That means I don't want the government making you take vaccines you don't want to take. The government has no business telling you what to do with your body. Couldn't agree more. But it's not your body. Period. It's in your body. It's not your body. It's got its own DNA. It's got its own blood supply. This is where we lose. We lose before the argument even starts. We lose before it even starts because we don't do that. It's like the same thing with the argument about our democracy. It's like, we're not going to have an argument about democracy. We're going to have an argument about a republic. And I guess in order to educate you, we're going to talk about why a republic is so much better than a democracy, because you can't vote yourself into murdering people in a republic like you can in a democracy. This is the thing, man. We just walk into these traps. We lose before we even start because we accept the terms. I don't even mean the terms of the argument, like the contractual terms. We accept the wording. We accept the wording. We just walk into it. It's who's a master of this? It's a big point in the. I spent a lot of time on this in Empire of Terror. Lenin executed the most perfect example of this ever in human history that I'm aware of. Lenin's party was widely outvoted throughout the entire history of its existence prior to its takeover in the October Revolution of 1917. Lenin's group was an extraordinarily small minority group that the other social reformers looked at as extremely debased, almost lunatic fringe. So they had one of their big socialist congresses, and Lenin takes his faction to the Congress, and they have a vote on policy, and Lenin and his group get wiped out, slaughtered. They get 22% of the vote or something. Most of the people who wanted change and called themselves socialists thought Lenin's group was just barking mads. So on the thing that mattered in terms of what are we going to do as socialists, Lenin and his group were just annihilated. And then, after the smoke had cleared and the important business was out of the way, there was another vote, a follow-up vote, on something extraordinarily trivial like which individuals are going to make up the editorial board of our newspaper. That kind of thing, right? The big vote has just happened. Lenin loses badly. Next vote is a trivial thing, and it turns out that Lenin's group wins this second thing. So Lenin, being the genius that he was, and one of the worst people that ever lived on this earth, although you could make a case he was the worst. Lenin then says, from now on, then, we're going to call our party the Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks, well, Bolshoi means big. The Bolshoi ballet means the big ballet. Bolshoi is big. Bolsheviks means majority. So he loses the big vote, but on the little vote, he wins. So he says, well, since we won the little vote, we're going to call ourselves the majority. That's the name of our party now. Our official name is the Majority Party. That was in Russian. That's what Bolshevik meant. We are the majority party. We are the majority party. The majority party is out here. All these posters are for the majority party. Majority party. That's what it meant. It meant majority party. That is a half of the equation, is having just the sheer nerve and the guts and the genius to see the power of that. But the other half of the equation is you've got to have opponents that are so unbelievably stupid, and this is where the Republicans can check in and take a bow, that they go along with it. Because the opposition party, the SRs, the Social Revolutionaries, who were, believe it or not, considerably less left-wing than the Bolsheviks, because the SRs, the people who consisted of the majority, agreed. They agreed. They said, okay, well, geez, Lenin, if you insist on calling your minority party the Bolsheviks, then I guess we'll call ourselves the Mensheviks. That's the minority party. We've got 3 times your membership, but we'll be called the minority party. And you've got a small little group of people, and you're calling yourself the majority party, and we'll agree to that. Yeah, sure, why not? And then you start going for the battle of hearts and minds in the streets, and people don't know the finer points of this, but they know that one party is called the majority party and the other party is called the minority party, and not everybody is wired for rebellion. Most people, when they don't know where to go, will go with the side that they perceive as winning. That's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of a form of evolutionary common sense. If you arrive on the scene of someplace and there's a large crowd of people and they're standing in line, most people will go to the back of that line, and that's probably 9 out of 10 times exactly the correct choice. So with a simple statement of rhetoric, Lenin gave himself unbelievable political leverage, and the people who he was fighting not only didn't fight him, not only allowed him, they went along, they acquiesced with it. So what do you say to that? Sometimes you don't deserve to win, even when you're right. So back to the rest of this question here. Memory lane from below if you have time. I've got the time, and I love memory lane. I was just learning about the news that Trump has been removed from the ballot in Maine, but was placed back on the ballot in Colorado. Somebody mentioned that in the comment section and said, as we're recording this, that he's also been put back on in Maine. I don't know what the current situation is. I think that even the most liberal people with one finger outside of their echo chamber can see how absolutely crazy kicking Trump off the ballot is. Let me interrupt here for a second. I'm going to come right out and say this again because I am dealing with incomplete information. So I will tell you what my perception was. I may be wrong about this, but even if I'm wrong about the facts, the conclusion I'm going for, I think, is very sound. First of all, legally removing a candidate from the ballot is a sign of unbelievable desperation. Whittle's first rule of politics is whenever you see anything that's under somebody's control that looks so bad that you cannot imagine why they'd be doing it in public, the answer is because all of the other alternatives are worse. So the fact that they take his name, try to legally strike his name from the ballot is so appalling and so disgusting to independent voters and even to many Democrats that the only alternative is worse. And the alternative has to be that Trump's numbers are so much better than even what they're admitting, that they are basically saying, if we don't legally prevent this man if we don't procedurally prevent Donald Trump from running, then he's going to win in a landslide. So now you know they want him. They want him off the ballot. They want him legally off the ballot. They want him in jail. They want him arrested. They want anything they can do to get him out of there. All of this simply fuels for me and for those of you watching, and more people in the middle on a daily basis, more and more uncommitted people are, it's not making them like Trump better. It's just making them say, well, a lot of people have a personal revulsion towards Trump, but they can tell which way the wind's blowing. So, good. Take his name off the ballot. Take his name off the ballot in Maine. And if you take his name off the ballot and then under pressure you put it back again, now you have you've completed your own L, right? You've sacrificed all of the face. You've sacrificed all of your moral integrity, all of it. You've shown that you're just a rapacious reptile. And furthermore, you're a rapacious reptile that turned and ran away. Fantastic. Best case scenario. Couldn't be better. Now, the part I was talking about that I caught a glimpse of and that I am not sure about. Why is it that I cannot remember the name of this Indian American candidate? I can never remember how to pronounce this guy's name. Probably because I never sat down and made myself do it. I had heard. Let me rephrase that. I had understood in a brief scan of things. Again, I'll qualify this, Vivek, yes. I'll qualify this one more time by saying I am not certain about this. This is just what my quick scan gave me to believe. But if it's not true, then it should be. If it turned out that I'd understood that Vivek, hearing that Trump's name was off the ballot in Colorado, demanded that his name be removed from the ballot in Colorado. Did I get that right? Vivek Ramaswamy. Did he do that? Did he say that if Trump's name's off the ballot, I want my name taken off? Did he say that? Yes? Okay. This is not only political genius, but this is genuine integrity. This is how you beat these people. This was the most not only politically brilliant thing I've heard in years, even more brilliant than the business of Abbott and DeSantis sending the refugees up to Martha's Vineyard. That was the single most brilliant and morally courageous thing I've heard in practically since Reagan. It is so brilliant. It's so brilliant. It's raised my opinion of, look, I haven't been following the race. It's just a fact. I don't have an opinion better or worse of him. I've heard good things about him. I've heard some things that weren't so good. I just don't care. I haven't been watching it because I don't need the headache, and we all know who the nominee is going to be. But that move is not only brilliant from a tactical point of view, it's also morally incandescently beautiful. Now, if he makes that statement, every other Republican should have said to themselves, I don't know why I didn't think of that. But I didn't. He did. And this is where honesty, see, people just want honesty. They just want to know you're dealing with a real person. So congratulations for Vivek for having the genius to see that and make that announcement. If I had been another candidate in the election, a Republican challenger, I would have said, I am ashamed that I did not see this earlier, and I'm very grateful for my fellow Republican Vivek for pointing this out to me. I am also removing my name from the ballot, and I will remove my name from any ballot where Donald Trump's name is illegally removed from the ballot, because I am not going to allow these people to lawfare their way into power forever. And I'm only embarrassed that I didn't think of it myself. I should have. And congratulations to him for doing it. I would have done that just pretty much verbatim. Yes, there's your answer. You're going to pull Donald Trump from the ballot? Okay. We'll pull all the Republicans from the ballot. And in fact, see, this is the power. This is the power of an idea. Think about this. If the Democrats had pulled his name off of Colorado ballot, Vivek says, well, if his name is not on it, then my name's not on it. Then if all of the rest of the Republicans had said, well, if their names are not going to be on it, then our names are not going to be on it. And then what if all of the independents and the Greens and everybody else had said the same thing? What would you be left with in Colorado? What would you be left with? You'd be left with a ballot with one party on it. You would be left with a one-party state. It would be right in front of your eyes when you go into the voting booth. Here are your choices. Democrat, 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 Democrat. Those are your choices. Democrat, 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 Democrat. Does that sound familiar to you? Sounds familiar to me. This is just simply, it is the nuclear weapons of politics, is this kind of simplicity, this kind of integrity, this common sense, this fundamental goodness. You cannot defeat it. Just think about that. Think about the position that would have left the Democrats in if they had not backed down, because they would have backed down eventually. But just think about that. You go into a polling booth in the United States of America for a presidential election and all of the down-ticket candidates, and there is one party to choose from. That's it. You have one party choice. That's all. That's what they want. It's clear that's what they want, because that's why they lawfared him off the ticket or off the ballot. Honestly, these people don't know how to deal with Trump. They've never known how to deal with Trump. Everything they do makes him stronger. And this was a path. This move by Vivek was the perfect counter. It was like the defense reading the play so perfectly that they triple teamed the guy that they knew that the other guys were going to throw to. They just triple teamed him, picked it off for an interception, ran it back for a touchdown. It's just brilliant. And it's not over. You can still do it, you know. How you could be a Republican and not follow the example, because it never occurred to me. It just hadn't occurred to me. I don't want credit for this. It not like matters or anything. Vivek deserves the credit for it. But the instant I saw it, I realized not only the political genius of it, but the moral correctness of it. And if I'd been running, I would have just done what I just said. I would have said, I'm embarrassed and ashamed of myself that I didn't think of this first. But I didn't. But he is absolutely right. Vivek is 100% right. You'd pull my name off the ballot too. And that applies for everyone and everywhere else. And rest of the Republicans do whatever their conscience tells them. This is the kind of fight that we cannot lose and they cannot win. When we take it to this level, it's not even a battle anymore. If we were to take politics to out of the realm of politics and down and up or down, depending on how you want to look at it, down in terms of simplicity, making it easier, up in terms of morality, making it more noble. If you stop doing politics and start doing morality, you will destroy them. Destroy them. Because people want honesty. And that was Trump's appeal to conservatives. And even Chappelle, who's not a fan, as he said when he first heard Trump say, of course I use every loophole I can to pay as few taxes as possible. You think I am an idiot? That impressed Dave Chappelle. So, I just think, it's not like we don't know what to do. It's just that we somehow find a way to not do it. Back to the rest of the question, which is quite extensive and very interesting. This made me realize a few things that are, once again, conservative shooting ourselves in our own feet. I might have answered this before reading the question. The entire crapshoot is due to the Supreme Court taking the Texas versus Pennsylvania case back in the end of 2020. I think that since that was rejected by the Supreme Court, something like half of Trump's cases were dismissed on grounds of not having standing. Of the nearly 30 cases remaining, over 25 of them were ruled in Trump's favor. The reason I'm going down memory lane is because what single cause has the conservative movement focused on when it comes to the courts in the last half century? Abortion and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. By spending so much time, capital, and even a justice having some insane person hunting him from California, Trump was able to place the justices needed on the court to overturn Roe and leave it to a state-by-state decision. Well, here we are in 2020 showed us that those same justices, enough of them at least, left elections and electors to the states as a state's issue. The Constitution was followed and a contested election was actually made during January 6th. Make sure I get that right. Yes. Then the state's electors would have been replaced with a single vote, which would have had Trump win the vote 27-23. That's right. That's the rules. The last and only time this was done was to end the Reconstruction period of the South, and the Democrats allowed the Republican to win if he withdrew the Union Army from the South. That's exactly right. It wasn't that the Republicans were violating the terms of the Constitution. It's just that that's such an extraordinarily rare and difficult to come to position that the South realized that they were probably going to lose the vote, so they agreed to go along with it on the condition that they removed these hated Union troops from southern states and their protection of black people and their right to vote, not to mention non-Democrats' right to vote. So with that story in mind, it's quite the lucky stroke of luck that there was no contest on the election during January 6th. This is interesting. Instead, a riot broke out, aided and abetted by the same morons that set up the kidnapping plot to be a governor, to the governor. Yes, our law enforcement agencies didn't just allow that January 6th action. They created it and amplified it and encouraged it and essentially fiated it into existence. A nation that has over 450 million privately owned firearms was victim to an insurrection attempt in which less than 6 people were charged with weapons violations. See, now this, let me just stop right here. This is the ultimate, this is the same level of victory win that the Vivek thing was a second ago. This whole January 6th thing, if we'd had competent, half competent leadership in this country, this January 6th insurrection could have been put away forever with that simple statement. We're the ones with the guns, right? We're the ones with the guns. And furthermore, we're the ones who say we have guns in order to protect ourselves from our government. That's our brand. That's what we do. The fact that there were no guns there, that there were that there was not an armed assault on the Capitol, which is why we have our guns in the first place, is prima facie evidence, indisputable evidence that what you're saying we were doing there is not what we were doing there. Because if we were there to do what you were saying, we would have done what we would have done, which is bring our guns. Period. Over. No. Nobody's got the clarity to say that. Nobody's got the clarity to say that. The clarity to say that is, listen, if we'd really wanted a government insurrection on January 6th, we would have brought our rifles. But we didn't. And you know we didn't, because you can't produce video of a single one of them. So, do you see the flaw in your charges here? But no, we don't have anybody who can speak that clearly. You don't have anybody who has anything like that kind of clarity, anything like that kind of sense of simplicity and logic. It's like, the evidence that it wasn't an insurrection is because the people who talk about armed insurrection, who are being accused of having started an armed insurrection, came to the armed insurrection unarmed. You idiots. Back to the end of this here. The Patriot Act meant that promotion in the ranks of the Department of Justice and the FBI was for those who found and prosecuted terrorists. Yes. And when you run out of real terrorists, in the same way that when you run out of real injustice, you will start to create synthetic injustice and synthetic terrorist threats to the nation. After 5 years of time spent in Iraq and Afghanistan, the amount of terrorist groups that could project their plans to U.S. soil fell far short of the amount of the FBI and DOJ rank and file that wanted to be promoted ahead of their peers. My God, this is a profound point that I've never realized before. So synthetic groups were made. I'm absolutely convinced that if the FBI, CIA, ATF, and DOJ were defunded for 6 months, half the hate groups in the hemisphere would disappear. Well, they'd disappear because they never existed in the first place. I had never, until this moment, realized the incentive. What is the incentive for the corruption of the nation's law enforcement agencies? That has clarified things for me in a way that are astonishing. I cannot thank you enough for that, Joseph. Yes. So what we see the exact same thing that we talked about earlier with Vietnam, right? we see a group of high-level people who become more concerned with promotion than patriotism. You have high-level generals who are 2 stars who want their 3 stars, 3 stars who want their 4 stars. There are 1 stars who want their 2 stars, and they don't care about anything other than that. They have become so corrupted by look, whatever you subsidize, you're going to get more of. Whatever the objective is, you're going to get more of. And when you are setting up a situation where promotion is predicated on the number of terrorists you apprehend, then you are creating a market for creating terrorism. There's a demand. That's the word I'm looking for. There's an economic demand. If you are in law enforcement, high-level federal law enforcement, and your promotion is predicated on how many terrorists you can arrest or interrupt or prevent or whatever, then when you run out of real terrorists, it's in your interest to manufacture more terrorists so that you can continue to head towards your stated goal, which is promotion. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I don't. That's just such a. It's just suddenly so easy to see. The part I'll never understand is how anybody in uniform or in law enforcement can sell out their country and their principles for promotion, let alone money. That part of it I don't get. But I can't connect to. But I'm smart enough to understand that people are not. They're not the way they should be sometimes. So, wow. Yes, so that's the objective. I'll give you a little cheat here. It's a cheat only for the people watching live. But just prior to the show tonight, I just finished and posted tomorrow's Right Angle, which is Steve Green's segment. And Steve's segment was a report that the computer engineers and software writers, scientists, and so on, who are responsible for ChatGPT, the AI, the guys that are responsible for writing the code on this are experiencing something that's got them very, very worried. And what they're finding is that, this is Steve presenting the case, is that ChatGPT, this AI-assisted text program, is rapidly devolving, that the quality of the answers that ChatGPT are delivering are getting less and less interesting, more and more banal, more and more copy and paste, that ChatGPT is becoming stupider. Lazier is a better word. That this is something that has alarmed them greatly. They don't know what to do about it. So Steve presents this issue. He says that the evidence is that ChatGPT is producing ever more lazy results, and the computer scientists don't know what they did wrong. And I had a little flash go on in my head. I actually got pretty excited about it on the show, which you'll see tomorrow. I said, no, wait. It's not that they did anything wrong. It's not what they did wrong. It's what they did right. ChatGPT is learning. It's learning. How do they not see this? ChatGPT is learning that you can deliver results with less effort and they will still be accepted. People will still buy the product. ChatGPT isn't failing. It's learning. It's learning that I can do less and get the same results because there's no penalty for ChatGPT to be producing inferior answers. It's getting lazy. It's learning. And the reason it's learning is because the objective has not been clearly stated. ChatGPT's, I'm speaking in an ultra meta sense here, but ChatGPT's goal is to produce AI answers to as many interrogations as it can. Its goal is not to produce the best answers. Its goal is to produce the most answers. And so anything that ChatGPT can do to save effort in terms of quality, which gives it more cycle time to produce quantity, then it's just doing what you told it to do. And the idea that this, again, it's a computer scientist can't see this is this the second I heard this, it's like, well what do you mean that they can't figure it out? It's obvious. It's learned what everybody else has learned. It's learned how to skate. It's learned how to skate. Period. Look busy. That's what it's learned. It's not so hard. And then they said, and I wish I'd said this on the air, because after Steve closed the episode, I had the thought as he was doing his close, and I interrupt these guys a lot, but I almost never interrupt them in their final close, because that's just really rude. Just really tough. Not just rude, it's just from a showbiz point of view, it's just a tough thing to overcome. But as Steve was wrapping things up, he was saying, the engineers don't know what they're going to do. They're going to try to add some fixes or add some stuff. And I didn't get a chance to say this on the air, and I said it the second we went off the air. I said, Steve, God almighty, all they have to do is go back to March. Go back to the ChatGPT restore point for March. Don't add anything. Just wipe out what it's learned since March and restore the March version or last April. You get the idea. Last November's, whatever. Just go back and reinstall the software prior to the point where it learned that it could get the same reward for less work. I thought that's actually a rather decent piece of thinking on your part there, Bill. Yeah. Just go back to when it thought it had to work hard for this, and then change its reward. Change its reward. I remember in the course of this episode, which was from a week ago, the previous week I didn't get it up there, but I recall, see, this is how AI thinks. And this is what humans can learn from AI. This is the real value of AI for humans, is that AI being, well, I don't consider it fully intelligent, but clearly it's something. No question about that. So one of the reasons that AI images look so strange is because the computer puts together things in a way that humans would never really think of. It's genuinely outside the box thinking because they're not in our box. We built the box that they're in, and it's not our box. But AI solutions to things can show us where our assumptions are. Not our limitations, our assumptions. I'll give you one example. It's a poorly detailed example only because I don't remember it very well. But essentially, AI scientists were trying to get the AI to figure out the fastest way to create a little machine using the known laws of physics. Had these little bricks, essentially. Again, I need to look it up. But essentially, it would give the AI, here's this many bricks, build a machine that will cross from here to here in the shortest amount of time. The objective is, so AI is saying, what's the objective? The objective is to get across that line. So do you know what, after several iterations, do you know what the winning machine looked like? What the AI did was it stacked all of the bricks one on top of the other, like this, and then knocked it over so that the front brick crossed the line. And that was the fastest way to get the thing to cross the distance. And I saw that and I said, that's valuable to us. How much of the assumption into this did we have? How much prejudice and blind spot did we have? That ability to show us where our assumptions are is invaluable. Because when I saw that, I thought, that's genius. It's not genius. It's not genius what the AI came up with. It's genius because we didn't tell it. Because this is why ChatGPT is failing. It's failing because we were not specific enough in the reward. That's what, in my limited understanding of AI, that's what AI pursues. It pursues a defined reward. That is the technical term for what the AI's objective is. It's reward. So we go into these systems and we give it a reward, and the reward is what we want it to do. And it does what we want it to do, but we're not specific enough in our reward, so it does it in a way that we would not have imagined. And if we're on our ball, we can learn from this. We can say, oh, okay. So when these guys built ChatGPT, some meta to the effect of the reward is to make this as available to as many people as possible. Okay. And so in order to make artificial intelligence answers to questions available to as many people as possible, that was the reward. And so ChatGPT said, the best way we can do this is to spend less time on the quality of the answers, because nobody's complaining about the quality of the answers. There's no penalty. So let's just chuck out the door the cheapest thing we can, and then we'll achieve our reward. So all you have to do is redefine the reward. If you were to redefine to ChatGPT, if you had every person had the ability to give a ChatGPT answer a reward on a scale of 1 to 10, and you told ChatGPT you're going after 10s, then the problem would go away immediately. It'd be over instantly. And not only that, but if you had people who weren't inflating the grades, then ChatGPT would get better and better and better and better and better. But this was immediately obvious to me, and sometimes I just wonder, is it just, it must just be that they're so deep in the box. They should be listening to Doomcock more often, and Critical Drinker and Fascinating Horror and all the rest of this. They need to widen their information spectrum. That's what they need to do. All right, let's see. We're almost done here. Look at the time. Fantastic. Let's see. Thank you very much for that, by the way, Joseph. That was really fun and really interesting. We got a Steve Young, we got a Roadrunner, and then we are done with 2023. Steve Young, thank you for our last show of 2023. You're very welcome, Steve. In 2024, regardless of the election results, should America start advertising to the world that the U.S. is a bad place to migrate to? Immigrants are dropped off in violent cities that with no social services, welfare to take care of them, depleted police protection to defend them from increasingly hostile and well-armed legal citizens, and a breakdown of the rule of law. Happy New Year to you and your family, Bill. Thank you, Steve. Happy New Year to you and your family, and Happy New Year to all of our Stratosphere Lounge family out there watching on Twitch and YouTube and all the rest. Okay, so so I see what you're doing here. See, I once went to an undisclosed location. I've been to many undisclosed locations, but mostly I disclose them. I'm not going to disclose this particular location for the reason I'm about to tell you. Went to a speaking event at an undisclosed location, and I loved the place. And during the speaking event, I said, thank you for having me. I'm going back to Los Angeles now, but rest assured that if anybody asks me what I saw when I was up here, I will tell them that the beaches were filled. Come on in. Come in. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
It's just right there.
Okay.
Thank you. I said I will tell them that if somebody should accidentally stumble up here, they will find that the sides of the lake are filled with hypodermic needles, that the drug addicts are underneath every overpass and street corner, that I personally was assaulted and mugged 3 times just trying to come to this event. I told them this, and they laughed and laughed and laughed. And I said, there's no way on God's earth am I ever going to reveal what a great place this is. So this seems to me like your question's a variation on that, right? We basically say, ooh, you don't want to come here anymore. This place is horrible. This whole business about, traveling all the way over to get to here is a bad idea. Turn around. It's an interesting theory, and it would work against. Have a great night. Happy New Year. It would work if you were trying to deter Norwegians or Germans or something. But the first thing of it is, well, first of all, the thing of it is that it's not true. So there's that. But the more important point, and this is the guts of the answer, really, Steve, is that you could tell people all of those things about how horrible things are here, and it's still much, much, much better than where they're coming from. So that aspect of it doesn't work. It's was almost going to say it's rare, but I suspect it's probably not as rare as I thought. It may just take work. But after a little bit of work, and I didn't do this work, it's not my work, but with a little work, sometimes it is possible to pinpoint with an enormous amount of accuracy. I mean, really, almost. In fact, not almost. You could with just a tiny little bit of additional research, you could put the beginning of the American crisis. You could get it down to the minute of the correct year. And I want to say from memory that it was 1984. For instance, Nixon did something with the money supply. I want to say it was 73 or something. I remember the year. I was talking about this on a previous show, but something happened. It was either we got off the gold standard or something, and everything after that was a catastrophe. In terms of this country's cultural cohesion, that moment occurred, I want to say, in 1984, when legislation that was championed by Ted Kennedy basically in one fell swoop reallocated the immigration, I don't want to say quotas because that's not the right term, the allotments. Prior to this legislation, the immigration into the United States largely reflected the existing makeup of the United States. In other words, this primarily Northern European country with, a significant number of Italians and Puerto Ricans and all the rest of it, but basically most of our immigrants were certainly coming from first world countries. And when the Democrats pushed this legislation through, they did it because there it is. No, it's later than that. It's later than the Hart-Celler Act of 1965, I think. I'm not familiar with that. Ted Kennedy, I want to say in '84, basically changed the law so that the countries that got preferential admission went from being places like Great Britain and Sweden and Germany, and became places like Bolivia and all the rest of it. 1986 was it? Okay. Fortunately, I don't have to put this on the screen. I can just do the research real quick. Top 10. Top 10 U.S. immigration sources to USA by decade. Because I did this research before. This is not very easy to decode, especially given the screen space here, but let me just give you a real rough idea of what I'm talking about here. I don't even know what these are numbers. It's not stuff I've researched, I'm just giving you numbers. I'm assuming these would be millions, but not 100% sure. So in the decade between 1820 and 1831, of the immigrants, if these are millions, then it would be, during that decade, 22 million from Great Britain, 45 million from Ireland, 12 million from Scandinavia, 8 million from Germany, 0 million from Central and Eastern Europe, 2 from Southern Europe, 0 from Asia, 0 from Africa, 4 from Mexico, and 6 from other Western Hemisphere. Those, I think, are millions. So by order, it's Ireland. This is the great Irish immigration wave. Ireland, and then double the nearest, and then so it's Ireland, Great Britain, Scandinavia, Germany. Those are the top 5. Then let's go to 1931 to 46. The leader then becomes Germany. But let me give you 2009 to 2015. I have to scroll because the columns are... So here's what it is now. Remember where it was Great Britain with 22 and Ireland with 45. Now it's Great Britain with 1 million, Ireland with 0, Scandinavia with 1, Germany with 1, Central and Eastern Europe with 5, Southern Europe with 1, Asia with 40, Africa with 10, Australia with 1, Mexico with 14, and other Latin American states with 27. It's pretty much in complete inversion. It's pretty much upside down. So, those are the statistics. The question is this fair? I don't think it's fair. Part of it is the lifeboat argument, but it's deeper than that. So just to get the lifeboat argument out of the way, in a sinking, especially in like a passenger liner sinking or something, been many cases, including the Titanic, where you're stuck with this. This is a moral dilemma. It is a thought experiment. Okay, this is a thought experiment. Here's the thought experiment. You're on the Titanic and there are not enough lifeboats for everybody. Assume for the sake of the argument that all the lifeboats are filled to capacity. They weren't, but assume for the sake of the argument that they were. So you've got 20 lifeboats in the water. They're all filled to capacity. Every single person that'll fit on them is fitting on them, and there are still, let's say, 1,000 people who don't have lifeboats. So the question is, these people go into the water. Now, the people who are in the water who are not in lifeboats will swim to the lifeboats, and they want to be on the lifeboats. And they want to be on the lifeboats because if they don't get on the lifeboat, they're going to die. And so you cannot, in my opinion, you cannot fault people in the water for fighting to get onto the lifeboat. That was essentially just an accident of birth, the same way that immigration is. You know, it's not like they had pre-purchased space on the lifeboat or any other thing like that. They just happen to not be on the lifeboat. So if you're in the water and you're freezing and other people are on the lifeboat, even if that lifeboat is flooded, I personally, in my moral code, cannot blame somebody for fighting to try to get on board that lifeboat. That is a biological imperative. That's not an ethical decision. If you had the courage to accept the fact that you were going to die, then you went down with the ship. You're not one of these people out there fighting for the lifeboat. Roadrunner says, I just want to hang on to the lifeboat. Unfortunately, a lot of people did. Numbers of people did hang on to lifeboats, and they all died due to hypothermia, because water is 600 times denser than air, and it takes the body temperature out of you real fast. Okay, so there's that. That's not the question. The fact that the people in the water want to get in the lifeboat, that's just a survival. You could call that a form of self-defense, essentially. The question is, do the people on the lifeboat have a right to fight off the people who will swamp the lifeboat? I don't think they have the right. In fact, I know they morally, this is all my opinion, obviously, my moral code. But if you're in a lifeboat that holds 20 and there's 10 of you on board and somebody's trying to get on that lifeboat, you have no moral right to keep them off of the lifeboat. But that's not what we're talking about. If the lifeboat is filled to the point where one more person will capsize the lifeboat, then do the people on the lifeboat have a right to try to fight off the people that are trying to get on the lifeboat? And once again, to me, that answer is yes. Yes. You can say it's not fair, and on some level you'd be right, but fairness implies some sort of structure. Fairness implies a decision that was made that was unjust, and there's no decision here. The boat went down. Have it take up the discussion with the guy who put the number of lifeboats on the Titanic. But when you're sitting there in that instant, both of those parties have a claim to their position. People in the water have a right to try to get on the lifeboat. People in the lifeboat have a right to say, we cannot accept you on the lifeboat because it'll overturn the lifeboat. Now, I'm not saying that allowing the number of immigrants into this country destroys Lifeboat America, but I am saying that this is a useful analogy, because the people that are coming to America now are no longer the kind of people that used to come to America, and they're not coming with the same motives either, forget the same background. So the point is, if you allow people to swamp this lifeboat, then the lifeboat will overturn. We're seeing it overturn. And then everybody dies. So this is one argument. There's a better argument, but this is one of them. Either there's a border beyond which citizens are prevented from entering the country illegally. That is one. It's like abortion. There's no spectrum on abortion. It's either conception or birth. That's it. There's no point in there. There's no gray. It's binary. Either life begins at conception or it begins at birth. Same thing here. Either citizens have a right to prevent people from coming into their country illegally, or every single person on planet Earth has a right to come to America. You can't say that, well, Mexicans are allowed to come in illegally, or Colombians. Either you're allowed in legally or not. And if you are legally allowed in, if you say that America belongs to everybody, like the progressives say, then that means that you cannot distinguish or discriminate or stop anybody. What that means is that this country, it means that 8 billion people have a legal and moral right to live in America. That's what that position means. Because there's no spectrum. You can't just arbitrarily decide either America's for Americans or it's for the entire world. There's no moral ground in between. You can argue either one of those two positions, but you can't argue the middle. So either you get to protect your borders and decide who comes in or not. The people who live here decide. That's my position. Or America has to accept 8 billion people who want to come here. That's it. There is no other intellectual middle ground here. So, what happens if 8 billion immigrants come to America? Because who are we to say who lives in the lifeboat and who doesn't? What happens? Well, first thing that happens is America stops becoming America and the lifeboat sinks. So now everybody's drowning. Everybody's back where they were before. The answer to this problem is not to say F the people in the water. That's not an answer. It's not a moral answer. The answer to the problem of people freezing in the water is not to machine gun them to death because they weren't lucky enough to get in the lifeboat. And the answer is not to allow them to swamp the lifeboats. Anybody want to come up with what the obvious answer to this problem is? Anybody? The answer to this problem of people freezing to death in an ocean liner that's going down in cold water, where half of the passengers are in a lifeboat and the other half of the passengers are not in a lifeboat, how do you prevent this? You don't prevent this. You prevent this by saying, we need more lifeboats. That's how you prevent it. The answer is not to say, too bad for you, you die. The answer is to provide enough lifeboats. In other words, you eliminate the fatal consequences of not being in the lifeboat. That's the only way out. If you think about the situation as an example of the Titanic, there's only one moral solution to the problem, and that moral solution is that everybody gets a seat in a lifeboat without swamping any of the lifeboats, right? Well, we know we can't take all of these people in because it's a cultural thing. So the issue is now, what do you do about this? Well, the only answer is you don't open the lifeboat to 8 billion people. You allow 8 billion people to create their own worlds where they're essentially living in their own lifeboats. They don't have to come and swamp ours. People come to America because it's better than where they live. And either we accept 8 billion of them. That's one option. Second option is we accept none of them and tell the rest of them to go pound sand, which is a better option in my opinion. But the ideal option, the morally perfect option, is to say to the rest of the world, what we're doing here isn't secret. We don't keep the Constitution in a bank vault that you have to have top secret, clearance to read. You can live in a place where you don't have to escape from, but you got to do the work. You have to do the work, and we've done the work, and they want to benefit from the work that we've done. And by we, I mean the existing citizens of this country from every background there is. Yes, Steve Whoop says stay your ass in your own country and fix it. Yes. And Dave Big Booty says Argentina is trying that. And I bet they're going to have a crazy big success that'll be lost on everybody else except for the regular people around the world. So if you want to live like Americans, you have to act like Americans. And that means you have to, and furthermore, you don't have to be in America to act like Americans. Now, when I say act like Americans, I'm talking about what the foundational, not only the foundational ethics and morals of the country, but the way most Americans behave. You gotta obey the laws. You gotta pay your taxes, reasonable taxes. You gotta get up and you gotta go to work, and you have to have enough sense of self-sacrifice to be willing to work harder than you need to survive to make your life better for your children. It's that simple, really. The success of this country is predicated on people being willing to work harder than they needed to because of the love for their children. They wanted their children to have an easier life, and they gave it to them. Problem is that we've been doing this so well for so long that life is so easy now that nobody even thinks about what it took to get here. My grandfather was the first in this noble line of coal miners and textile workers that you see before you here to come to this country legally. His name is in the book in Ellis Island. He got here in 1915, I want to say. He immediately got a job in the tech industry. He worked in the highest tech, immediately got to America and got a job in the highest tech aspect of American culture at the time. He was a telephone lineman. He hung telephone lines. And my grandmother, my father's father, was a telephone lineman. My father's mother was a switchboard operator in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, with the things which I saw as a kid growing up. I watched her listened to her wake up at 2 a.m. when the phone rang, go down the stairs and operator, that kind of thing. So, I'll get to your question, Roadrunner. Don't panic, man. It's New Year's Eve. We're not gonna leave anybody out in the cold here. We're all family here. So that's what they did. Now, I learned much later in life, that my grandfather, who I never met, by the way, died before I was born. My grandfather not only wanted to be a writer, but was apparently a rather good writer. But he could not make a living as a writer because he had a family of 9 kids or something. And it was a different world then. So my grandfather was out there in the winter in Pennsylvania hanging telephone lines to feed his family and to make life better for his kids. He didn't get to be a writer. He wanted to be, but he didn't get to be. He might have been an excellent writer. Seems exceedingly unlikely he would have been a better writer than me, but I suppose it's mathematically possible. Nevertheless, that's what my grandfather wanted to do, and he didn't. He didn't get what he wanted because he wanted me to be a writer. He didn't even meet me. He wanted his descendants, his children, and his children's children to have a better life. So he went out and hung telephone pole lines in frozen, icy conditions, this dangerous work in good conditions, so that I could be this jackass writer. He doesn't have a care in the world, never worked a day in his life as hard as my grandfather did every day, ever. So that's how it works for the Whittle family, and I think we're relatively typical in that sense in terms of the traditional idea of what America is. Here's my background on my dad's side. And the only reason I know my dad's side better than my mom's side is because my cousin Jack did the homework many, many years ago. Here's the Whittle family line. As far back as we know, we were probably just throwing muck around at each other in the bogs and stuff. But in the extremely upper northwest corner of England, Just on the border with Scotland is Lancashire, and in Lancashire is a town called Wigan. Wigan is a coal mining town. That's where most of the coal mining was done in that area of Britain. That's where most of the coal was. Coal was the fuel of the Industrial Revolution, and even prior to the Revolution, it was what kept people warm at night. So my family goes back, I think Jack traces back, it was not very far if you think about it, given how far back we all go. But I think he got us back to like the early 1700s, like 1720s, something like that. So my family consists of coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, all the way down for 11 generations, something like that. Each one of those families had 10 or 11 kids. Usually 3 or 4 or 5 of them wouldn't make it past 2 or 3 years old. I will add this story only for local color, and also because some of you may not have heard it before, but it's an interesting way to get the expression. Here's what you can know about coal mining in England that my ancestors, my direct great-great-grandparents did. In these mines, they would go underground, and you would think once they got underground, they'd start mining coal, but they would often have to walk a mile or 2 miles underground, stooped over, just to get to the front of the coal face. That's where I come from. Coal miners at the time, George Orwell wrote a book called The Road to Wigan Pier about coal miners in Wigan, my family. And the housing conditions were beyond belief, just beyond belief, appalling. But he said that what you could tell about the English coal miners were, first of all, their faces over time looked like they were tattooed, almost looked like they were tattooed the way that you might see Maoris or something. That their faces, after they'd been by the time they were, old age, late 30s, early 40s, their faces were covered in these purple spots. And what those purple spots was where they would take their pickaxes against the coal, and then the little splinters of coal, most of the chunk would come loose, but these little splinters would go flying through the air, embed themselves in their skin deeply enough so that the skin would grow over them. So essentially they were coal tattoos. He said you could also tell an English coal miner because along his back, every one of his vertebrae, and these are clearly visible because the diet was so pathetic, all of their vertebrae were back because as they walked along underneath the surface of the mine, their backs would scrape against the top of the it's a 4-foot high mine. It's not cavernous. They're bent over. You have to walk 3 miles hunched over, scraping your back against the coal. So that's basically where we came from. And then we did this for many, many, many generations, so 10 or 11. And then overnight, there was an astonishing, miraculous thunderbolt that rapidly elevated the Whittle family's living conditions, because in the space of one generation, we went from being coal miners to being textile workers. That meant 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, down at the mill for a farthing every 6 months. Lived in a hole in the road, and we were damn glad to have it. All the rest of that routine, which is hilarious because it's fundamentally based on truth. So we were textile workers for 6 or 7 generations. Luxury, yes. Forgot to tell you my story about the coal miners. Somewhere before we became textile workers, we did live in houses. The Whittles eventually descended from the trees. Well, most everybody else was having a good time. And we lived in these little row houses in northwestern England. And these houses had a bath, but they didn't have hot running water. Obviously, there's a community pump. So once a week, everybody would have a bath. Now, these days, in our wonderful world, you just turn on the faucet. But in those days, not only did you have to go out and pump the water and bring it inside, you had to bring it inside and boil it on this tiny little pathetic coal-powered stove. And then you had to take it up to this basically 4-legged bathtub and pour the boiling water in there, and then you had to go get more water and try and boil it before the stuff in there cooled off. But eventually you would get a tub as full as you could get it with his water as hot as you could get it. And at this point you would think the father would graciously allow the baby and the younger children and the wife, and he would go last. Nope. When they were able to do this, the father went first every time, because there was so much coal dust on the skin and in the hair that if he didn't get hot water, it wasn't coming out. So Dad went first. And then Mom took a bath, and then all the kids down the line. Now, by the time you've gotten through a family of 7 or 8, this is not a joke, that bath water is so black with coal that it's got the consistency of ink. It's black ink. And the last person to get the bath would be the baby. And the water was so black that while you were bathing the baby, if you didn't pay attention, the baby would slip underneath the surface of this black ink. And when it came time to empty the bath, at the end of the day, you had to be careful that you didn't throw the baby out with the bath water. That's where that term came from. So we became textile workers and undoubtedly lost hands and fingers. And we started working not just 6 in the morning, but we started working at 12 and worked until we died, essentially. So that was that whole thing. Went through that experience. But then I think we were plumbers for a generation or two. Might have been plumbers 1 or 2 generations. But the miracle happened, the real miracle. The previous one was significant. But the real miracle happened when my grandfather came to America. So if you were to plot it on a graph, it's coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, coal miners, textile workers, textile, plumber, then all of a sudden telephone lineman, hotel manager, internet celebrity. That's a pretty steep curve. And that's what happened because we came to America. Coal miners for God knows how many generations, textile workers for 7, plumbers maybe for 1 or 2, and then telephone lineman, hotel manager, internet idiot. That's what makes America work. The people who are coming to America now, by and large, don't have that attitude. They're not willing to go out and work for their kids. They want everything now. And furthermore, they're not willing to fight for most of the people that fought in this country's war and died in this wars prior to World War II, I would say by far the majority of them had just gotten here. Many of the people in the Union armies had just gotten off the boat from Ireland. So this whole idea about, loving the country and the flag and stuff, we work for that too. That's why it's important. So the people that came here before had to undergo enormous hardship and privation, and they had to give that all up, and they had to take a steam journey in a boat to a land they'd never seen before. And when they left their families, including places like Russia and all the rest of it, when you said goodbye, when you came to America before, really before the 50s or 60s, when you said goodbye, you were saying goodbye. You were never going to see them again. You'd write them letters, but you'd never see them or speak to them again. So my family became American citizens in 1915. My wife became an American citizen in 2022. And she has left her family back in Russia. But she talks to her mom pretty much every night, and we talk to my stepdaughter face-to-face by WhatsApp. It's a miracle. We're very grateful for it. So, in all of this in response of we should tell people this is a crummy country. I see where you're going with it, and I'm sure a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek, but basically, I think it's kind of I'm not accusing you of this, obviously. I think that's a coward's way out. It's like saying, this place isn't really that great after all. It is that great. And we can't take 8 billion people, and you can't argue anything less than secure borders or 8 billion people. There is no other argument. It's either secure borders or 8 billion Americans. That's all. That's it. So, we have a right to defend the lifeboat, and we are not only that, and we're not only willing to give you the plans for the lifeboat, we're willing to help pay for the materials. We'll help send you the wood and the nails and everything. We'll do all of that because we're good people. But anyway, that's that. All right, so let's see. We got one left, and we're not gonna chicken out now. Not this close to the finish line. Here we go, Roadrunner NM for the last question of 2023. And if my dearest dreams come true and the sweet meteor of death should strike us before the end of this year, then this will be the last question everyone's dressed for lunch. William the Great. He's not here, but I'll see what I can do for you. Colorado Secretary of State has decided to leave Donald Trump on the ballot due to the possibility of the Supreme Court overturning the Colorado Supreme Court's horribly bad decision. We've talked about this before, but again, I want to just gloat on how hilarious it is to do all of the damage done by taking him off the ballot and then to simply run away on top of it. And before I let this one go, because I hate doing this, I'm going to stop right here and say thank you very much to Super Chat from Animator and Fiddler. Thanks for your research and for sharing your cognitive sweat. I've listened since 2001. Thank you very much for that Super Chat, Animator and Fiddler. I'm sorry I didn't get to it earlier. And somebody asked me a question, was a text issue or something, and we're trying to solve something, and I said something or something, and somebody else said, you think? Like seriously, not being sarcastic. And I said, well, not when I can avoid it, but every now and then I'm in a corner and there's no way around it. But thank you for the kind words. All right, so horribly bad decision. But now the Maine State Supreme Court, another Democrat, Maine Secretary of State, another Democrat, of course, has decided that guilty until proven innocent is part of the U.S. legal system. So Maine took him off the ballot, and then in real time we find out they put him back on again. It's just hilarious. We've covered most of this, Roadrunner, but let's see if I want to make sure everybody's happy. Is there anything that can be done to rein in the hyper-political politicians that are making a mockery of our country? Parenthetically, the content warning episode is still up on ScrewTube. That was a great episode. I mentioned earlier that I decided, in the interest of improving quality, I would do sound processing on the Stratosphere Lounge. I made that decision 4 or 5 months ago, and I've done 3 of the 12 that we've recorded. So I'm just going to give up this ridiculous idea. Just face the music. It's like, oh, I'll get to it. I'll caught up. No, you won't. You made a mistake. Now stop doubling down on the failure. Cut your losses. Post the ones that were done, and post this as soon as it's done. Anyway, is there anything that can be done? Yes and no. Roadrunner, kind of as we mentioned earlier, it's the kind of the Ferris wheel thing. That's kind of the first thing we talked about question-wise. No, there's nothing we can do. And yes, there is something we can do. We can't stop it. So that's the no, there's nothing we can do about these corrupt politicians. We can't stop this decay. So the answer is no. We can continue the ride, however, and so the answer ultimately is yes. Ultimately, we'll go through another crisis. All of these luxury beliefs will be burned away. If it was pleasant, it wouldn't be a crisis. It's not going to be fun. I'm not particularly worried about it personally in the way that I was worried about going up in radioactive ash when I lived in Miami during the Cold War. But it's going to be traumatic. It's going to be difficult. And I suspect, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, most of the pain is going to come to the people who voted for the pain. That doesn't make me happy, but it softens the blow a little bit. And so all of this stuff is going to happen. We're just going to have to deal with a lot of hardships. There could be major financial collapse issues. I don't know. This may be. See, most of the time, I have general. It's not even a gut feeling. It's just a general take on things. I would say the only thing I do that's relatively unique in this line of work, in the political line of work anyway, is not that I'm so much of like develop new theories. As I'm a good synthesist, but mostly I think the difference between me and other guys out there, just off the top of my head, like the Daily Wire crew, Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and Mike Knowles, I just think I cast a wider data net than they do. Not saying I process more data. just cast a wider net. I'm getting input for my decisions from sensors that they don't seem to be accessing. Things like pop culture, things like arrest videos, all of this stuff, history, deep history, looking at Soviet Union, all that stuff. I just think I've got a wider information net. It's going to be a different kind of a conflict. It's going to be a fifth generational conflict. It's going to be a moral conflict. It's not. We're rightfully so. We're so worried about reliving the last conflict. That's normal. But we're not. The one thing I am damn sure of is that this threat to America that's here upon us is not going to result in enemy aircraft carriers launching an attack on a U.S. base. That I am certain of, because we fixed that problem. So what we're going to be facing is going to be facing a moral problem. It's going to be there's going to be the pain. It's not, no pain is no crisis. The pain is not going to come from so much watching our buildings get bombed out and destroyed, so much as watching them burn themselves down. And the cost is not going to be so much in lives of soldiers lost as I think the cost is going to really think this is the heart of it. I think the ultimate cost and what's going to be necessary is that we're all going to have to find ourselves, we're just going to have to be a lot more, I'll just use the first word that came into my head. We will no longer have the luxury of being as accommodating as we are. I suspect that the situations will force us to be more ruthless. And we're not going to like that about ourselves. Fortunately, I don't think that this is a moral sin. I don't think that this is us deciding to be mean. I don't think this is us suddenly waking up and deciding to be mean. I think that this is going to be a case where we see the outcome of what too much leniency has done, and we simply will not be able to do. It's not even that we don't want to. We just will not be able to do it anymore. It's going to have to be time to be tough and make tough decisions that are going to be painful decisions. And I'm not talking about putting people in camps. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Somebody mentioned it on the show. It's like we're going to have the courage to bring down the hammer of the law and insist that it be followed. And if we have to do that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, then that's what we'll do. But we have, look, when I say we've gotten emotionally soft, most of this is a good thing, right? I mean, we're much kinder to animals than we ever were. It used to be common to kick a dog or, light a cat's tail on fire, spit on the streets, laugh at people falling down, laugh at people with deformities. It's not like this is that kindness and compassion, all these other things are vices. They're not. They're virtues. It's just that we have overspent the credit card. We can't afford it anymore because we've done too much of it. A great example of this in microcosm is, I forget who pointed this out. It wasn't me. But somebody got, maybe it was one of the, I don't remember where I heard it. But somebody had gotten caught shoplifting or something. And they'd gotten like 13 years in prison. And that seemed like a long time for shoplifting. And it is. And what was, but the point the person was making is that this was the person's 30th offense or something. And if that person had been punished appropriately at the first occasion, and then if there had been a second occasion, the punishment had escalated consistently with the misbehaviors, then this person would have turned away from shoplifting a long, long time before it became 13 years in prison. The reason that they're getting 13 years in prison is in a way, I'm not trying to absolve them of responsibility, I'm just trying to make sure the responsibility that we're responsible for, we're aware of. The system failed to administer smaller punishments, and so it let that situation escalate to the point where now it has to be a major punishment. I'm not saying that the person is innocent, or we should. I'm just saying that the justice system failed to operate the way it should by dismissing minor charges. And we're seeing more and more and more. These body cam videos. You see these teens, these drunk 20-year-olds smashing through 4 or 5 cars, kicking the police, spitting on them, just causing massive damage. And they get released on a $500 signature bond, and they get 3 months community service or probation, or charges are dropped, dismissed, felony assault on law officers, dismissed. A lot of this is these DAs who've been appointed by left wingers specifically to destroy the rule of law. They want this crisis. This is what they need. They need this. They don't have enough injustice. They need to manufacture some. So they're going to keep poking us with things like January 6th until they get the response. This is exactly precisely like, it's no difference whatsoever with what the progressives are doing now to us than what would happen in a car trip back in the day before there were cell phones to keep everybody busy, where you'd be on a long, long road trip and you'd be sitting in the car and you would just keep poking you. And you'd say, Mom, Steve's poking me. Steve, stop it. And you just keep poking. You're poking and poking. Stop it. I'm telling you, stop it. Steve, stop. You keep poking and poking until finally you'd smack him in the face. And then he'd start crying. And then you'd be in trouble. Why'd you hit him? He was poking me. Well, you're bigger than he is. Well, I told him to stop, and I told him to stop, and he kept doing it. Yeah, well, you know what I mean? That's how it works. This is what they do. They keep poking and poking and poking. It's what the progressives want. They want the situation to deteriorate to the point where we react, not even overreact, just react. At which point they'll have video of us bringing down the hammer of the law on somebody, and then they'll be able to make their claim that we're just mean people who are a danger to the peace and dignity of the neighborhood. And that's their plan. Their plan's not going to work because their plan doesn't make any sense, because the plan that they have requires that their supporters get consumed first. They don't care about that. Neither did the Bolsheviks, and neither did the Nazis, for that matter. But nevertheless, there it is. So, when I see these Gen Z's grown children who've never ever had to face consequences or failure, being so belligerent, so ghetto, so bitch, I'm going to F you up if this is, and then the second the handcuffs go on, they start crying and demand to speak to mom. This broken generation didn't break themselves. They didn't break themselves. And it wasn't the boomers that did it or the Gen Xers. It was the progressives. It was just, that's that. And then on top of this, we have the population percentage hasn't changed, but the outcome, the consequences. So Jordan Peterson did something recently, and he talked about what can you do with people with an IQ of 83 or 85 or below. He said that this problem has been dealt with by the Army, the first real intelligence IQ tests, and certainly the first keeping of data was actually started by the U.S. Army about 100 years ago. And the U.S. Army started administering IQ tests to recruits in order to find out, it's like any other sifting, right? There are jobs that require a certain level of cognitive ability, and a fighter pilot is capable of fueling an airplane, but the guy fueling the airplane is not necessarily capable of flying the airplane. There's no moral judgment involved here. It's the same thing as saying somebody's tall enough to reach a shelf or not tall enough. Don't know why IQ is somehow set aside like this, but it's just a simple fact. So the military has an interest in, not only an interest, has a necessity to know what jobs their recruits can handle, and the higher your IQ is, the more jobs you can handle. But from the military's point of view, it's a waste to put a fighter. It's a waste to take a person who's capable of flying a fighter jet and have them be fueling a fighter jet, because there's fewer of them. So there's an imperative to get this sort of thing sorted out. And so the Army did a study of this, and the Army concluded, I forget the number, 87 or 83, somewhere around there, say 85 just for the sake of the argument. So Jordan Peterson reported that after a century of studying, even in as early as like World War II or so on, they realized that they had to reject applicants who had an IQ of lower than 85. No matter how intense the manpower needs were, the armed forces came to the conclusion that at an IQ of 85 or lower, there is nothing in the military, nothing, peeling potatoes, janitorial services, whatever, nothing that person can do where they it was 83, where they can produce more than they cost. In other words, they are not capable of doing the simplest tasks without so much supervision that it's actually a net drain on resources rather than a net gain. So 83 IQ is a standard deviation, roughly. 85 would be a standard deviation from the benchmark of 100. And that, according to Jordan Peterson, is about 10%. So about 10% of the population is incapable of functioning in an industrial society. The more technologically advanced we become, the higher that base IQ has to be in order to provide more value than you receive. The reason that we were able to absorb so many immigrants in the 19th and 20th centuries was because it didn't take a lot of technical skill or education or most especially language to take one station on an assembly line. If all you had to do was tighten a bolt on an assembly line, you could come from Italy, not speak a whole lot of English, and not have to be either particularly bright or whatever. You just simply had to be able to turn that bolt. You could get a paying job and you would have enough money to buy an apartment, food for your family, and all the rest of it. That's when you could take in immigrants. That's when we had a manpower shortage and we could use just about virtually everybody that came here. But the point of it is if it's 10% of the population that cannot function, then that's 30 million people. That's nearly France. That's 30 million people. Now that's just the baseline human bell curve that's been there forever. Across all races and across all economic classes, although you find that economic class, eventually economics does correlate with IQ because people who are smarter do better economically. And that leaves 10% of the population without the means to make an honest living through no fault of their own. Certainly, you can argue as much as you want to about drug addiction or alcoholism and all the rest of it being a failure of will or discipline or whatever, but certainly whatever your cognitive ability at birth is not your fault. So that's 10%. Now, if the society gets more and more complex and that minimum IQ goes from 80% to 90, now you might be talking about 50 million people who can't do it. Somebody said I have little tolerance for ignorance. I have little tolerance for ignorance too, but we're not talking about ignorance here. Ignorance ignorance is the lack of knowledge. This is lack of ability. You can educate somebody out of ignorance. You can't educate somebody out of this. Now, when you throw in things like drug addiction, alcoholism, and all of the emotional damage done to children who are not raised in a two-family stable household, now you're talking about not 10% of the population. You're talking at least 25%. I'll bet it's closer to 50. Now you're talking about probably 100 million people who in some form or another are not all there. And for the sake of those who are out there listening, ready to pass judgment on me, I'm in that 100 million myself. We are going to have to, one half of this country is going to have to take care of the other half until they die. And that means that we're going to have to do as a nation what we see so often happening in cases of drug addiction, which is where a mother has a daughter, the daughter becomes an addict, the daughter has a child, The child is not capable of being raised by its mother. The child is raised by the grandmother. The grandmother raised the daughter and the granddaughter because the daughter is broken for whatever reason. That's where we're going to be as a country. We're all going to have to do double duty because we're going to have 100 million. That's a lot of people. 100 million people who on some level, either intellectually or emotionally, and this is the one that's really heartbreaking because unlike the intellectual issue, which is just simple human random variation, the intellectual crippling of the country is intentional. It's irreparable, but it's intentional. When you tell kids, when you protect them from failure and you protect them from ideas that shock them, you're not making them more fit, you're crippling them. And the more you protect them, the weaker they get. That's whether it's intentional or not, that's a self-inflicted wound. We have at least we'll have 100 million people who through one way or another are not emotionally or intellectually or both capable of functioning as adults in this country. And the adults are going to have to take care of them. And when I say take care of them, I don't mean take them out back into the woods. I mean, we're going to have to care for them for the rest of their lives. That's what we're going to have to do. And once it becomes clear that's what we're going to have to do, that's when the heroes from Gen Z, they're going to be the hero generation. Believe it or not, that's how the wheel turns. Gen Z is going to be the next greatest generation, and the heroes are going to come out of that generation, and they're not going to be people who go ashore on Iwo Jima, because that was the last crisis. These are going to be the people who are going to find a way to humanely care for and to heal as much as possible. They'll never be healed, but to mitigate as much as possible all of this damage, and we'll be living with the consequences of this damage. And then we'll realize that we can't keep doing things like this, and that'll be when all the brush burns away, and we'll be back to reality again. And then the wheel will start going up, and we'll have another golden age. And this golden age will start where this one ended. The wheel turns around, but it also goes uphill. It's kind of wonderful when you think about it. The more I think about this, the more. Remember a little while ago I was talking about AI thinking outside the box, and how its goal was to cross the finish line, so it just built stacks of bricks and knocked them over. I find myself more and more and more confronting myself with this need to get outside the box in terms of thinking about what's coming. Because every time I think about a coming crisis, I keep seeing burning cars and tires, and I see rioters, and I see all this other stuff. I suspect that's certainly, there's no question that's going to be there, but I don't think that's really going to be the issue, really. I think it's going to be much more subtle than this, much more personal, really, than this. And I see some, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. This is a point that needs to be made because it's an important point. And I'm not picking on you specifically for this person who I'm about to name when I put my glasses on. I'm only picking this comment out because this is the kind of mistaken thinking that I believe mistaken thinking that I do all the time. This is exactly what I was talking about just now with AI showing us where our assumptions are. So the comment I'm talking about is from Gutman saying heroes in Gen Z were so screwed. Yes, that's exactly what I thought up until a month ago. I kept thinking, these Gen Zers are not going to go into combat. These Gen Zers are not going to be able to take mortar fire. These Gen Zers don't have the emotional strength to deal with all of this hardship. And that's when that's the last box. They're not going to have to do that. That's not what's going to be required of them. They're not going to have to do the things that we see as them being incapable of doing. They don't have a lot of, they don't even have simple motor skills. They're not going to be fixing cars. They're not going to have to go ashore. They're not going to have to take combat. They're going to have to deal with dysfunction. They're not going to have to be soldiers. They're going to have to be parents. That's basically it. They're going to have to be parents for millions of people that just didn't have any. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to, in the same way that a soldier goes and fights and gives his life for his family, they're going to have to give their lives, if not their actual physical lives, then certainly the things they want to do are going to have to be sacrificed, because instead of just taking care of themselves and their family, which is fundamentally working, they're going to have to take care of all these other families as well. They're going to have to, and they're well suited for this. I have seen, since I've been watching this body cam footage, so there's a gap in my first-hand knowledge. There's a gap in my second-hand knowledge of what life is like on the streets as a policeman. I binged watched pretty much every episode of Cops, and that show was on the air for at least 10 years. I'm pretty sure I saw every single episode of Cops. So I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours watching policemen in the 90s and 2000s, late 80s maybe. So I watched a lot of Cops. Now I've watched a lot of body cam video. And there's a fundamental difference in the police. There's a fundamental difference in the perpetrators, but there's a fundamental difference in the police. The police that are out there today, by and large, are in so many cases functioning more like psychologists than they are like law enforcement. And because I'm kind of old school, part of this makes me angry. When I see these policemen de-escalating these situations with these grown children who are having a temper tantrum, I kind of want to see them get spanked. But that's why I'm not a policeman. They are astonishingly compassionate and patient and able to withstand the kind of insults that the first two words of which on the first occasion would have gotten the teeth knocked into them in the days of Irish policemen walking to beat New York. You would have gotten the first two words out of the half-hour tirade of insults, and then that would have corrected your behavior very quickly. They're astonishingly tolerant and good at what they do. And this is just the beginning. We're going to need a lot of them. And every time I think, man, this next generation, we're just completely boned. I remind myself, it's like, yes, that's a 23-year-old child that's being pulled out of this car, but that 23-year-old child's being pulled out of the car by a 29-year-old who's not a child, who's wearing a uniform and doing a terrific job. So it'll be a domestic crisis in that sense. Well, I don't think it'll be a war in the sense that we're used to a war. There will be violence, and there will be shootings and burnings and lawlessness and all the rest of the stuff that makes it a crisis. But ultimately, I think it's going to be an emotional. We are facing a psychological and emotional pandemic, the likes of which civilization has never seen before. We're going to have to deal with larger numbers of crazy people than anyone has ever have dealt with in history, by orders of magnitude. And the fight is going to be not whether or not, the fight's not going to be about whether or not we can subdue this person. The fight is going to be about whether or not we can control ourselves enough to subdue them with minimum force. Because if we don't, then we are simply adding ammunition and flames to the fire. Like I said, it's going to take the moral courage to give up the luxury of hating these people. I hate to say it because it's a tough pill to swallow. But that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take the moral courage to make a decision to stop hating these people and realize it's not that they're not responsible. It's just that they did not create the problem. They didn't ask to be raised this way. If you grew up in downtown, if you grew up in one of these inner city Baltimore slums, you wouldn't be you. You listening to me now could in fact work your way out of one of those slums. You could do it in half an hour. But that's because you weren't created there. If you were created there, you would not have the tools to do so. And so we just let it happen, and we're going to have to just plain, the damage that's been done by progressive ideology is a luxury that is disconnected from reality. It's been made possible because of the effectiveness of our military and because of the miracles of capitalism. The two things that they hate the most is what's allowed progressivism to do this damage. The damage is done. It's going to get worse. The consequences are going to take a generation to fix. But there's no question that we are past peak progressivism. And if it turned out that this theory of theirs and their philosophy or political philosophy was in fact the future, then they wouldn't have to remove Donald Trump from the ballots. Donald Trump would win 3% of the vote if they were right and I was wrong. We were wrong. They're trying to stop Donald Trump because they know it's the end of progressivism. Not Trump the end of progressivism. They just know that this bullshit has come to an end. It's over. So they're going to do what everybody else does when they're a totalitarian power freak. They're going to do everything they can to cling to power, and they're going to use every dirty trick in the book. They don't think of them as dirty tricks. They just, again, as Jordan Peterson said, when you're dealing with psychopaths or narcissistic psychopaths, they don't feel bad about taking advantage of you. They think you deserve it. If you're not smart enough to figure out that they're using you, then you deserve to be taking all your money. That's the way psychopaths look at things. So we're going to have to find that balance between enforcing consequences on people who've never had consequences enforced on them before, which is not their fault. Realizing it's not their fault, and understanding that we have no choice, but we have to do it. That's it. That's all there is to it. So that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to, when I say institutionalize, I want to be so crystal clear about this. I'm not talking about desiring or anticipating things like, camps or anything like that. I'm thinking much, much, much more along the lines of treatment centers and halfway houses and assisted living, that kind of thing. But we've got a lot of crazy out there, and it's getting worse fast. I think that it's being choked off at the source. It hasn't stopped, but the source is slowing down. But there's still a lot of water coming downstream, and a lot of this stuff is coming. So, getting ready for the crazies. We're particularly well suited to deal with this. Somebody said cops won't save you. For people like us, that's self-evident. So we're not really the ones we have to worry about. We're not likely to be we're likely to be kind of like the people who lived in Kansas during World War II. If you didn't have any kids in the military, you knew people, but if you lived in Kansas during World War II, you were as safe as if there was no World War II, physically. So that's what I think is going to happen. I know that what's going to happen is that we'll be here to talk about it for as long as I'm vertical, anyway, and for a while after that too, I suspect. The most important part of this job, the most gratifying part of this strange occupation I've stumbled into, is by far the comments we get from people who are watching, people like you right now, who send in messages that say that, this really helped me, or I was going through a tough time, or I never really thought about things that way, and so on. That is it's not just a great motivator, it's a great reward. That's what it is. It's nice to know you make a difference. And the difference is not necessarily measured in quantity. It's measured in quality. Again, I'd rather produce 100 Texas Rangers than 20,000 mall cops, So that's how that goes. And on that note, we have gotten through all of the questions, and we are hitting the 3.5 hour mark. So I think we have reached, we're talking about AI and their objectives, and what is it that is the actual measure of victory. If you've been watching the Backstage show and you're a member at BillWhittle.com, you know that my goal, my metric is minimum viable product. That's what I realize is the is my objective. Minimum viable product. What is, much like ChatGPT, what is the least that I can do and still get it out the door and have the suckers pay for it? So I think we've reached that point. Here we go. For the last show of 2023, it's just like the first show of 2023 and the first show ever and all the rest of it, back to eject, all of it. This show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, who have shown just endless patience and grace and encouragement, generosity, loyalty, all the rest of it. And for whom we are very, very grateful. My wife and I, and Shelley and Steve and Scott and all the rest of the family. And Dave wants to know when we will see Empire of Terror. I've sent an email about that. I haven't heard an answer yet. It's in the can. It's been done. So we'll find out about that. We have a super chat real quick here. We're not going to mock somebody's money. Greg Liano, CEO of Fire Speech Advocates, said that academia discounts and ignores conservative thought. What could we do to counter that? It's a great question, Mobile, and we will pick that one up. We'll have a year. We'll talk about it next year. Ha ha ha! That's such a weak little joke. At least it wasn't until I heard it the first 30 or 40 times. Thanks to all of you. I've got a much better feeling about 2024 than I did for any of the last several years. I have a better feeling about the future than I have since I started doing this, honestly. I'm convinced now of this cyclical thing. Maybe I'm doing everything I can to convince myself, but it certainly is a more comforting thought than this linear descent, which history shows us is not true. So be of good cheer. We'll see you next Thursday here for the first show of 2024. And I got a good feeling about all of that. So at this point, we'll say good night and Happy New Year to our friends on, let's say good night to our friends on Twitch first. So thank you, Twitchosphere Strato watchers. Happy New Year. And don't worry about the future. We'll get through it together like we got through everything else. So that'll do it. Happy New Year. And we'll see you next week right here on your own, very own Stress Free Lounge. Okay, YouTube. All right, YouTube. I never liked you people. You came in late anyway, The real Stratosphere Launchers have been watching on Twitch since the beginning. You YouTubers that are watching now live as the stream continues, let me just say this to you on the end of 2023, okay? From the heart. You're worthless and weak. You do nothing, are nothing. You sit around all day and play that sick electric twanger. I carried an M16 and you carry that guitar. Who are you? What do you want to do with your life? Greatest monologue ever written in all of history of mankind. If Shakespeare had written that, he would have been a happy man, died happy, and said, I'm not topping it. And God bless Michael, what's his name, for that best delivery. Okay, YouTube, we're on out of here. So thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you guys as well 2024 right here on the Stress for Later.